Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The MC is reborn as Metro Man. He is reborn inside of Invincible as the brother of Nolan Grayson, or more well-known, Omni-Man.
Invincible, reborn as Metro Man, brother of Omni-Man. Chapter 1, A Man Out of Place. I woke up with the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like thunder in my ears. It wasn't just loud, it was too loud, the kind of sound that shook through bone and vibrated through the air around me. I sat up, confused at first. The ceiling above me wasn't familiar, but the sunlight streaming through the curtains felt warm, grounding. A bed, sheets tucked in neat, a nightstand with a lamp, a guitar leaning in the corner. And then it hit me. The rush of memory. Not just mine. His. Metro Man. Hero of Metro City. Golden boy with a golden voice. His memories were mine now, his victories, his jokes, his smooth-talking charm. The world saw him as a savior, a symbol, a larger-than-life figure who never missed a beat. But under those memories, deeper still, were mine. The ones I was born with. The Viltrumite blood that told me who I really was. The death I remembered, truck, pain, nothing, and the rebirth that put me here. The face in the mirror wasn't the one I died with, but it was the one I'd live with now. I stood, stretched, and the sound of my muscles moving was almost deafening. My hearing was everywhere at once. Every car horn 3 blocks down, every faucet dripping in the apartment above, even a dog barking 2 neighborhoods away. It was overwhelming, but it wasn't chaos. It was order. Every detail layered on top of another, crisp, sharp, perfectly tuned. I smirked. Well, I said out loud, my voice carrying that deep, smooth tone that wasn't mine but felt natural rolling off the tongue, looks like I'm back in the groove. Hearing it, that voice was surreal. I sounded exactly like him. Metro Man. Laid back, charming, confident, like everything in life was a stage and I was the headliner. But I wasn't just Metro Man. I was something else now. Something stronger. Viltrumite. That blood burned in me, heavy and sharp. Omni-Man's blood, too. My brother, though he didn't know it yet. We'd been sent here together, 2 Viltrumite soldiers disguised as saviors, meant to soften the planet before the Empire came. He played the part of Nolan Grayson, family man, all-American. And me? I played the part of a glowing hero with a guitar. But I didn't live with him. I didn't even talk to him. I chose my own space, my own corner of Earth. We were connected, but not united. I walked across the apartment, barefoot on the hardwood, and glanced out the window. The city stretched out beneath me, alive, bustling. Metro City, my stage. A place that believed I was theirs. I leaned against the glass, arms folded. Omni-Man was out there, playing father, playing protector. But I knew him. I knew the mission. He was waiting, watching, planning for the day Mark's powers would come in, for the day he'd finally reveal himself. And me? I had to decide what to do with all this. Metro Man's powers weren't just an act. They were mine. Flight, strength, invulnerability, and more speed that could stop time, senses that could hear the world's secrets. I wasn't bound to Nolan's way of thinking. I didn't have to wait and play quiet until the Empire arrived. I could play this my way. I reached for the guitar in the corner, strummed it once, and the sound was almost painfully clear. The vibrations rippled through the air like lightning. I smiled. Still got it, I said, voice smooth and casual. Man, I always wanted to be a rock star. Guess now I can be both. But beneath the humor, beneath the charm, my mind was working. Calculating. This wasn't just about playing hero. This was about power. About survival. about deciding where I stood when the Empire came knocking. I didn't owe Nolan anything. I didn't owe the Empire anything either. And these people? These humans? They looked up to me. They believed in me. And that belief had weight. I walked out onto the balcony, let the sun hit my face, and rose slowly into the air. My body moved like it had been born to fly. The city stretched beneath me, smaller and smaller as I climbed. The wind tore past me, but it didn't matter. Nothing could touch me. And for the first time since waking up, I laughed. Not Metro Man's public laugh, not the showman's laugh, but mine. Deep, full, unrestrained. Because for once, I wasn't stuck on the tracks of some canon story. I had a stage bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. I was Metro Man. I was a Viltrumite. And this world had no idea what was coming. Chapter 2, A Hero on Stage. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of my apartment. I didn't need to eat breakfast, but the smell of toast and coffee from a neighbor's kitchen drifted up, sharp and clean in my ears. Living alone meant no one disturbed me, no one asked questions, no one watched what I did. That was how I wanted it. Omni-Man was living out in the suburbs with his family, blending in, but I had my own life. My own role. I slipped on the white uniform. Cape over the shoulders, boots snug, everything polished to a shine. The people wanted their hero spotless, golden, larger than life. And Metro Man delivered. Always. I stepped out onto the balcony, stretched once, and then lifted off the ground with a soft push. Air folded away beneath me, and I rose until the entire city stretched out like a living map. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. A car accident, judging by the angle of the sound. I didn't hesitate. In a blink, I was gone, a streak across the morning sky. The freeway was backed up in a knot of horns and smoke. A truck had jackknifed, pinning a sedan against the guardrail. People stood out of their cars, shouting, panicking. I dropped down slow, not crashing, not making a scene. The cape fluttered as I landed right on the asphalt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Metro Man, someone shouted. I flashed a smile, easy and calm. Morning, folks. Don't worry. We'll have this cleared up faster than you can say rush hour. A woman clutched her chest, eyes wide. The driver of the sedan was trapped inside, banging weakly on the window. The truck driver was panicking, trying to pull at the bent metal. I walked up, rested a hand on the wreck, and gave the driver a nod. Step back, buddy. I've got it. He stumbled away. I leaned down, gripped the crushed frame with one hand, and lifted. Steel groaned and snapped, but to me, it weighed nothing. I peeled the door back, crouched, and extended a hand to the man inside. Easy now, I said, keeping my voice smooth, steady. Come on out. I've got you. His hand shook as he reached for mine. I pulled him out in one motion, setting him gently on the pavement. Cheers broke out around us. You're safe, I told him, patting his shoulder lightly. Little shaken up, but hey, you'll have a story to tell at the office, right? He laughed nervously, still pale, but alive. The crowd pressed closer. Phones came out, flashes clicked. Metro Man. Over here. Can I get a selfie? Say something for the camera. I raised a hand, smiling wide. Glad everyone's safe. Drive careful out there, all right? Your friendly neighborhood traffic enforcer doesn't want to make this a regular gig. Laughter rippled. That was all it took. Humor calmed them, steadied them. They believed. I flew the twisted metal to the shoulder, dropped it clean, and in the next moment, I was already in the sky again. I spent the day the way Metro Man always did. One rescue at a time. A fire in a high-rise downtown, people coughing in the stairwells, firefighters struggling with equipment. I dropped in through the smoke, lifted 2 people at a time, carried them out to safety, and waved off the applause. Now remember, folks, I said as cameras rolled, stop, drop, and roll. Don't worry, Metro Man's got you covered. They laughed, even in the middle of chaos. Later, a runaway train hit a broken track outside the city. Dozens of lives in danger. I caught the lead car, braced, and slowed the whole thing down until it screeched to a halt. Metal shrieked, sparks rained down, but no one died. Guess this is what they call an express stop, I quipped, dusting off my gloves before stepping back. People clapped, cheered, reached for me. That was the rhythm of the day. I didn't just save them, I entertained them. Metro Man wasn't just a protector, he was a performer. And they loved every second of it. But under the charm, my mind stayed sharp. Every time I lifted a car, stopped a train, or dashed through fire, I was measuring myself. How strong was this body compared to Nolan's? Faster, without question. Stronger? Hard to say yet. I knew I was faster than sound itself. I knew I could hear heartbeats across the city. That alone made me a different kind of weapon than him. And the people, they trusted me more than him. Omni-Man did his part, saved lives when it suited him, but he was reserved, distant. I was approachable. They laughed with me, they wanted pictures, they wanted to see me in action every day. That kind of faith was power. By late afternoon, I landed in front of a schoolyard where kids had gathered at the gates. Word had spread I was in the area. Dozens of them pressed against the fence, waving and shouting my name. I walked over, crouched down a little, and smiled wide. Hey, kids! You staying out of trouble? A chorus of giggles. One boy held out a notebook. Can you sign, Metro Man? I took the pen, scrawled a big looping signature, and handed it back. There you go, champ. Now study hard. Metro Man can save the day, but only you can pass math class. They laughed. More notebooks, more signatures, a few pictures. A girl tugged on my glove, eyes wide. Are you stronger than Omni-Man? I chuckled, tapping her nose lightly with a fingertip. Well, sweetie, let's just say we're both pretty strong. What matters is you've got 2 heroes watching out for you. It was an answer without giving anything away. I couldn't tell them the truth, couldn't let them see the Viltrumite underneath the cape. But it kept their trust intact. Evening came slow. I flew above the city as the sun dipped low, watching the skyline light up one window at a time. Patrols were second nature by now. I didn't need to search. I could hear crime before it happened, the rattle of a gun, the sharp whisper of fear, the hurried steps of a thief. I stopped 3 robberies before dinner. A gang trying to haul stolen TVs into a van. I dropped in, crossed my arms, and shook my head. Fellas, I said, smooth and calm. If you wanted a discount, you could have just waited for Black Friday. They froze. One tried to run. I blurred forward, tapped him lightly on the shoulder, and he spun around, tripping over his own feet. I stacked the stolen goods neatly, tied the criminals with a lamppost bent into a bow, and waved to the neighbors filming the whole thing. Remember to tip your local law enforcement, I said with a grin. The cameras caught it all. By nightfall, every TV station in the city had a clip of Metro Man saving lives, cracking jokes, smiling wide. When I finally landed back at the apartment, it was past midnight. The cape smelled faintly of smoke, the boots scuffed from asphalt. I dropped the suit on the stand, grabbed the guitar, and sat by the window overlooking the city. Strumming a chord, I listened to the echo. My hearing carried it all the way down the block. The music wasn't for them, though. It was for me. A reminder of the role I played. A reminder that this was my stage. People thought Metro Man never tired, never stopped. They didn't know he had an apartment. They didn't know he sat in silence at night, thinking, watching. I looked out at the skyline. Somewhere out there, Nolan was sitting with his family. Somewhere out there, the world was turning toward Mark's awakening. But right now, the city believed in me. That was the part I played. That was the stage I owned. And tomorrow, I'd do it all again. Chapter 3, Brothers at the Door. The city was quiet. No alarms, no shouts, no smoke in the sky. Calm days like this didn't come often, which made it the right time for something I had been putting off. Nolan lived in the suburbs with his wife and son. A quiet home, neatly trimmed grass, all-American porch with bikes leaning against the railing. He blended into this life like he'd been born to it. Me? I stayed in my apartment in the city, cape folded on its stand, guitar leaning in the corner. But we'd been sent here together. Same mission. Same blood. We hadn't spoken face to face since I'd woken up in this body. That was overdue. I rose into the sky, cape trailing behind me, and kept my speed slow. This wasn't a mission. This was personal. The neighborhood spread beneath me in clean rows, every house a mirror of the next. I dropped down on the Grayson lawn, boots hitting the walkway, and looked up at the door. I could hear everything inside. Debbie moving in the kitchen, humming softly. The scrape of silverware in a drawer. Mark upstairs, his voice faint as he spoke to himself, reading, maybe, or muttering about homework. And Nolan, sitting in the living room, turning the pages of a newspaper one by one. I knocked. Firm, 3 times. The door opened to Debbie. Apron tied neat around her waist, hair pinned back. She froze for half a second, then smiled politely. "Metro Man," she said. "This is unexpected." I flashed her the smile, smooth as always. "Afternoon, ma'am. Just thought I'd stop by, check in on an old friend." Her brow furrowed, but her voice stayed warm. "Well, come in." I ducked my head slightly, cape brushing the doorway as I stepped inside. The house smelled like coffee and laundry detergent. Family pictures lined the walls. Nolan holding Mark as a baby. Nolan and Debbie on vacation. The whole place radiated a kind of domestic peace I never bothered with. Nolan came in from the living room, newspaper folded under his arm. His eyes locked on mine. Not angry, not surprised. Just calculating. "Metro Man," he said evenly. "Didn't expect you here. Yet, figured I'd mix things up." I spread my arms wide with that easy grin. "Can't let the whole city have me all the time. Thought I'd drop by for a more personal visit." Debbie glanced between us, puzzled but polite. "I'll get some water." She slipped into the kitchen, leaving us standing in the living room. Nolan didn't move. His jaw was set, arms relaxed at his sides. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Just visiting," I said lightly, dropping onto the couch like I owned it. "You've got the whole family set up going. House, wife, kid." I figured, hey, why not see how my old pal Nolan's living these days? His eyes narrowed. "Old pal?" I chuckled. "Sure. Something like that." The silence stretched. Debbie returned, set 2 glasses of water on the table, and glanced between us again. "So, you two know each other?" Nolan didn't answer right away. He sat across from me, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Yes," he said finally. "We know each other." "How?" Debbie asked, Curiosity plain. Nolan's voice stayed even. He's my brother. The words hung in the air. Debbie blinked, stunned. You're your brother. Surprise, I said with that smooth grin, raising my glass slightly in her direction. Family resemblance isn't as obvious as you'd think. Debbie turned to Nolan. You never mentioned. It wasn't important, Nolan cut in quickly. His tone didn't change, but it had weight. Our history isn't something I talk about. I leaned back comfortably. Don't take it personally, ma'am. We're not exactly the holiday card type. She looked between us, uncertain. I kept my tone light, easy, as if the entire thing was casual. But hey, better late than never, right? Family's family. Debbie forced a small smile, then excused herself, retreating back toward the kitchen. That left us alone again, the weight between us heavier now that the truth was in the open. Nolan's eyes never left mine. You shouldn't have come here. I gave him that same grin, unfazed. Relax. I didn't come to stir trouble. Just wanted to check in. See how you're holding up, big brother. You shouldn't have told them. I shrugged. Wasn't me. That was all you. He didn't reply. His silence said enough. Upstairs, footsteps creaked on the floor. A voice called down. Mom? What's for dinner? Mark came bounding halfway down the stairs before he froze, eyes wide. He stared at me like he'd just seen a ghost. No way, he breathed. You're your Metro Man. I leaned back, flashing him the practiced smile. That's right, kid. Live and in person. His jaw dropped. You're in my house? This is insane. Looks like it, I said smoothly. Guess I picked the right time to visit. He took a step closer, still staring. You're the real deal. You stopped that train last week, right? I saw it on the news. Yeah, guilty, I chuckled. Guess cameras catch everything. Mark laughed nervously. Wow. This is, wow. Mark, Nolan's voice cut through. Homework. Mark glanced at his dad, then back at me. Right. Sorry. It was really cool meeting you, Metro Man. Likewise, champ, I said warmly. Keep hitting those books. That's the real superpower. He grinned, then trotted back upstairs. His voice carried faintly as he muttered to himself about how he couldn't believe Metro Man was in his house. When he was gone, I turned back to Nolan. Good kid you got there. Nolan's jaw stayed tight. He's fine. Yeah. He seems fine. I pushed myself to my feet, brushing my cape back. Anyway, I've taken enough of your evening. Just wanted to say hello, see the family, you know how it is. You shouldn't make this a habit, Nolan said flatly. I smirked, heading for the door. No promises. Debbie peeked from the kitchen as I opened it. Nolan stood behind me, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I gave him a small two-finger salute. Take care, brother, I said, smooth as ever. Then I stepped out into the evening air, lifted off the lawn, and vanished into the sky. Chapter 4, An Uncle Revealed. The Grayson house was still quiet after Metro Man had flown away. The front door had closed, leaving behind the faint scent of air that had rushed in when he left. Debbie returned to the kitchen, clearing the glasses she had set out. Her hands moved automatically, rinsing one glass at a time, but her thoughts stayed on what she'd heard. Nolan stood in the living room, his posture stiff. He stared at the closed door, the cape of his own suit brushing faintly against the chair behind him. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw was tight. From upstairs came the sound of running footsteps. Mark jogged down, still wide-eyed from what he had just seen. His voice was louder than usual, carrying all the way through the house. "Dad!" Mark came down the last step and pointed toward the door. "That was Metro Man. In our house. He was right there. He was on our couch." Debbie leaned in the kitchen doorway, towel in her hands. She didn't interrupt. "Yes," Nolan said evenly. "That was him." Mark moved into the living room, hands flying as he spoke. "You never said you even knew him." "I mean, I figured, sure, two big heroes, maybe you talk sometimes, but the way you two looked at each other? That wasn't just colleagues." Nolan turned his head slightly toward his son. His voice was calm. "We know each other." "Well?" Mark frowned, confused. "Well? What do you mean?" Nolan glanced at Debbie, then back to Mark. "Metro Man is my brother." The room went silent. Mark blinked. "What?" "You heard me," Nolan said. "He's my brother." Mark's mouth dropped open. He spun toward his mom. "Mom, is that true?" Debbie hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes. He told me tonight." "I was as surprised as you are." Mark stared at them both. "You've got to be kidding me. Metro Man? The Metro Man? He's my uncle." Nolan gave a single, steady nod. "That's right." Mark dropped into the couch like his legs had given out. He rubbed his hands through his hair. "This is insane. Everyone in the world knows Metro Man. He's you, and then him. He's basically a legend. And you're just now telling me he's family? You hid that from me my whole life." "It wasn't important," Nolan said simply. Mark shot back instantly. "Not important? How is that not important? That's huge. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because our relationship isn't simple," Nolan said. His tone never wavered. Mark stared at him. "You seemed fine just now." "We tolerate each other," Nolan explained. "We care, but we don't show it. That's how it's always been." Mark blinked again, trying to process it. "So, what, you don't hate each other?" "No," Nolan said. "He's my brother. We don't hate each other. But we aren't close." Mark leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Why not? I mean, you're both heroes, both out there saving the world. Shouldn't you be, I don't know, a team?" Nolan shook his head. "We don't see eye to eye. We have different ways of doing things. That's been true for a long time." Debbie spoke softly from the doorway. "He said as much to me. They care about each other, Mark, but they don't show it. And they don't talk much." Mark turned to her, then back to his dad. "So you just keep it quiet? You don't tell anyone? You never even told me I had an uncle." "Keeping it quiet makes life easier," Nolan said. "For all of us. People see us as two separate heroes. That's enough." Mark let out a disbelieving laugh. "Easier? For who? Not me. I've been living my whole life not knowing the second strongest guy on Earth is literally my uncle." "You know now," Nolan said. Mark groaned, dragging his hands down his face. "That's not the point. You could have said something, Dad. Anything. Even just once." Nolan didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed steady on his son, his face calm, but his silence filled the room. Finally, he said, "Family is complicated. Protecting this planet takes everything I have. Introducing you to him was never the priority." Mark shook his head, still stunned. "Unbelievable." Debbie walked over and sat beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. Mark, your dad's right about one thing. Protecting Earth takes everything out of them. It's not about holidays or family dinners. But Metro Man is your uncle. That's true. Even if the two of them don't act like it. Mark slumped back against the couch, his voice quieter now. So, what happens now? Do I get to actually know him? Or is this one of those things where I just pretend I don't? That depends, Nolan said. Mark looked up. On what? On whether he shows up again, Nolan answered. Mark frowned. You think he will? Nolan's voice stayed even. He might. He does things his way. Always has. Mark sighed, trying to absorb it all. Metro Man. My uncle. That's insane. You'll get used to it, Nolan said. Debbie gave a small shake of her head, though she stayed quiet. Mark leaned forward again, elbows on his knees, still restless, still trying to process the reality of what he'd learned. The room fell into silence again. Debbie eventually rose, moving back toward the kitchen. Mark stayed on the couch, bouncing his leg, his mind still running in circles. Nolan stood where he was, arms crossed once more, his face a mask of calm. The truth had been spoken. Metro Man was family. But the distance between the two brothers remained as wide as ever. Chapter 5, Curiosity at School. The next morning in the Grayson household, the air felt heavier than usual. Debbie poured orange juice into glasses, setting one in front of Mark as he slid into his seat at the kitchen table. The cereal box sat open in front of him, but his spoon hadn't moved. He stared at the table with a distracted look. Nolan drank his coffee in silence, standing by the counter. He scanned the paper, as calm and unmoved as always. Debbie tried to fill the silence with the usual morning rhythm, but it wasn't enough. Mark finally broke it. So, are we just not gonna talk about it? Debbie set the juice carton down. Talk about what? You know, Mark said, glancing from her to Nolan. Metro Man. The fact that he was here. The fact that he's my uncle. Debbie's lips pressed together, her eyes shifting briefly toward Nolan. Nolan folded the paper neatly. We already went over this. Not really, Mark muttered. You just said it's complicated. That doesn't explain anything. Debbie reached across, resting her hand on his arm. Mark. Your dad told you the truth. That's what matters. Mark pulled his arm back, frustrated. It's Metro Man. Everyone knows him. He's, like, the other strongest guy on Earth. And you're telling me he's family? That's not something you just drop once and move on from. Nolan's voice cut in. Enough. He set his coffee down. I'm going to work. He left the kitchen, grabbed his jacket, and stepped out the front door without another word. Mark slumped in his seat, running a hand through his hair. Unbelievable. Debbie sighed softly. Give it time, Mark. Your dad and Metro Man don't have a simple relationship. It's not the way you'd imagine family to be. Mark didn't answer. He just grabbed his backpack and left for school. Classes dragged on. He couldn't focus. The chalk squeaking on the board, the teacher's voice going over equations, it all slipped by without sticking. His mind kept circling the same thought, Metro Man. His uncle. At lunch, he sat across from William, who was already halfway through his pizza slice. William noticed the blank look on his friend's face. You look like you bombed a test, William said, raising an eyebrow. What's up? Mark hesitated, poking at his tray with his fork. Can I ask you something? Hypothetically. William smirked. Oh boy. Here we go. Hit me. Okay, say you found out someone in your family was, like, super famous. Huge. Like everyone knows them. William leaned forward. What, like, your cousins in a boy band or something? Bigger, Mark said quickly. William tilted his head. Movie star. Bigger. William thought for a moment. President. Mark shook his head, lowering his voice. Like. Metro Man big. William snorted. Pfft. Yeah, right. What, you got a secret uncle who's Metro Man? Mark froze. The words were too close to the truth. He forced a shaky laugh. Yeah. Something like that. William leaned back, smirking. Man, if that were true, I'd never shut up about it. I'd wear a shirt that says Metro Man's my uncle every day. Mark pushed his food around with his fork, avoiding eye contact. Wouldn't that be weird, though? Like, if it actually was true? To just find out one day. William shrugged. I mean, yeah, it'd be insane. But you'd have access to, like, the coolest guy alive. Free concert tickets, autographs, rescues on demand. He's basically a celebrity who also saves the world. Mark frowned. He's not just a celebrity. He's a hero. Same thing, William said, taking another bite of pizza. Cameras are on him all the time. He's everywhere. People worship him. Mark hesitated again. Wouldn't it bother you, though? Like, if your family kept it from you? William raised an eyebrow. Depends. Why would they keep it from me? That's bragging rights for life. Maybe they didn't get along, Mark muttered. William snorted again. Come on. How do you not get along with Metro Man? The guy's perfect. If he was my uncle, I'd be at his house every weekend. Mark forced a weak smile. Yeah. Maybe. But he stayed quiet for the rest of lunch. When school ended, Mark walked home slower than usual. He kicked at cracks in the sidewalk, his mind still running in circles. By the time he pushed the door open, Debbie was in the kitchen prepping dinner. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air. You're quiet, she said, glancing at him as she stirred a pan. Just tired, Mark said, setting his bag down by the stairs. Debbie dried her hands on a towel. Still thinking about it? Mark sighed. I can't stop. I mean, it's Metro Man. My uncle. And Dad just drops it like it's nothing. Debbie stepped closer, leaning against the counter. That's how they are, Mark. They don't show much. Doesn't mean they don't care. But Dad didn't even want to talk about it this morning, Mark said. It's like he wants me to just forget it. He doesn't, Debbie said gently. He just doesn't know how to explain it. He and Metro Man never had a normal relationship. Not the way you imagine brothers should. Mark slumped into a chair. I just want to understand it. Everyone else sees Metro Man on the news, and now I know he's family. But I don't know him. I don't know anything about him except what everyone else knows. Debbie gave a small smile. Then pay attention. Watch him. Learn about him the same way everyone else does. You'll figure it out. Mark nodded slowly. Yeah. Maybe. That night, Mark sat on his bed with his phone in hand. He scrolled through clips of Metro Man on the news. One showed him lifting an entire bus out of a flood. Another had him signing autographs for a line of kids outside a school. Then one of him laughing off a robbery attempt, tying the criminals up while cracking jokes. Mark watched closely, looking for something. Anything that might connect Metro Man to his dad. But there was nothing. Metro Man was different, flashy, charismatic, constantly smiling. His dad was the opposite, quiet, serious, controlled. Mark set the phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Two brothers. Two of the strongest men on Earth. And a lifetime of distance between them. It didn't make sense. But he wasn't done digging. Chapter 6, The Nephew's Questions. The Grayson house was calm the next afternoon. Debbie was in the kitchen again, chopping vegetables for dinner. Nolan wasn't home yet, he was still out handling work, at least that's what he'd told Debbie before leaving earlier in the day. Upstairs, Mark sat at his desk, pretending to work through his math homework, but his pencil had barely moved in half an hour. His thoughts weren't on numbers. They were on the man who had stood in his living room the night before. Metro Man. His uncle. Every time he thought about it, his chest tightened with both disbelief and excitement. He had so many questions, but his dad had been frustratingly short about it. His mom was gentler, but she didn't have much to tell him either. That left Mark stuck with 1,000 thoughts swirling around. The sudden rush of air outside his window made him jump. Curtains fluttered. His ears picked up the faint thud of boots hitting the walkway below. Mark rushed to the window and shoved it open just in time to see a flash of white cape. His heart skipped. Metro Man! Mark whispered to himself. He didn't hesitate. He bolted out of his room, down the stairs, and into the living room just as the front door knocked. Debbie was already drying her hands, heading toward the entry. When she opened the door, the golden-clad figure filled the frame, cape shining in the afternoon light. Metro Man smiled in that smooth, practiced way that looked effortless. "Afternoon, ma'am. Thought I'd swing by again. Hope it's not too much trouble." Debbie blinked, then gave a polite smile. "Not at all. Come in." Mark nearly tripped over himself rushing forward. "You came back." Metro Man stepped inside, lowering his sunglasses down his nose just slightly to look at Mark. "Well, look who's ready to roll out the welcome wagon." He slipped them off and tucked them into his uniform. "Hey, kid. How's it going?" Mark's eyes were wide. I can't believe you came back. I've got so many questions." Metro Man chuckled, deep and casual. "I get that a lot. Fire away, champ. I've got some time." Debbie raised an eyebrow at her son's enthusiasm but said nothing. She gestured toward the couch. "Why don't you two sit? I'll get some water." Metro Man dropped onto the couch with a relaxed sprawl, cape draping over the cushions. Mark sat across from him, fidgeting, his foot tapping against the carpet. "Okay," Mark blurted, unable to stop himself. "How long have you been my uncle?" "Like, obviously forever, but why didn't I know until now?" Metro Man leaned back, grinning. "Well, forever's a long time. Let's just say your dad and I don't exactly put out a family newsletter. We both had our own ways of handling things. And, well, here we are." Mark tilted his head. "So, you and Dad grew up together?" "You could say that," Metro Man said smoothly. "Same start, same mission, but different approaches. He likes the quiet life. I like the city lights. He's the strong, silent type. I'm the guy with a guitar and a smile. Two styles, same job." Mark blinked. "But you're both, like, the strongest guys on Earth." Metro Man smirked. "Well, I don't like to brag, but yet. Pretty close to the top of the charts." Mark leaned forward. "So who's stronger? You or Dad?" Metro Man raised an eyebrow, then wagged a finger playfully. "Now, that's a question I don't answer, kid. Let's just say Earth's in good hands either way." Mark laughed nervously. "Come on, though. You've gotta know. I know, Metro Man said with that calm charm. But I also know better than to start that debate. That's one headline I don't want to see in the papers. Mark sat back, shaking his head. I still can't believe you're my uncle. Like, I've seen you on TV a million times, but I never thought. Metro Man reached into a pouch on his belt, pulled out a black marker, and snapped the cap off with a flick. Tell you what, kid. Let's make it official. You got something I can sign. Mark's eyes lit up. He scrambled up the stairs, dug through his backpack, and came rushing back down with a well-worn notebook. He held it out with both hands, almost reverently. Metro Man chuckled, flipped it open, and scrawled a looping signature across the first page. He handed it back with a flourish. There you go. One genuine Metro Man autograph. Keep that safe, might be worth more than your allowance one day. Mark stared at the signature like it was gold. This is, wow. Thanks, Uncle Metro Man. Metro Man gave a smooth laugh. Uncle Metro Man. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Debbie reappeared then, setting 2 glasses of water on the table. She gave a small smile as she saw Mark's grin. Looks like you made his week. Hey, what are uncles for? Metro Man replied, raising his glass. Besides stopping runaway trains, of course. Mark grinned, but his questions hadn't slowed. So, do you visit often? Or is this, like, a one-time thing? Metro Man leaned back, sipping his water. I go where I'm needed. Sometimes that means the city. Sometimes it means family. Who knows? Maybe you'll be seeing more of me. Mark's voice was eager. You should. I mean, Dad he doesn't really talk about you much. Metro Man chuckled again, low and easy. Yeah, that sounds like him. Like I said, strong, silent type. I'm more of a talker. Mark nodded quickly. So, if you're my uncle, does that mean, like, you'll train me someday? Debbie froze mid-step, looking sharply at Mark. Mark. Mark shrugged quickly. I mean, if I ever get powers. Just saying. Metro Man raised his eyebrows, then smiled. Well, that's a bridge you cross when you get there, champ. But if that day comes, I'll be around. You've got more than one option in the family. Mark grinned wide. That'd be amazing. Debbie exhaled slowly, then went back to her chopping board in the kitchen. She stayed quiet, listening to the conversation from a distance. Mark leaned forward again. So, what's it like? Being Metro Man all the time? Metro Man's smile softened, but his voice stayed light. It's a lot of faces, a lot of cameras, and a lot of rescues. People need saving, I show up. Simple as that. But you gotta keep it fun. That's the trick. Mark laughed. That's so different from Dad. He's always so serious. Like I said, 2 styles, Metro Man replied. But the job gets done either way. Mark shook his head, still awed. I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you. Yesterday you were just Metro Man. Now you're Metro Man, my uncle. Metro Man gave him that smooth, easy grin again. Well, lucky you. Not everyone gets family connections like that. The front door opened just then, and Nolan stepped in. His eyes went straight to the couch. Metro Man raised a hand casually. Hey, brother. Don't mind me. Just getting to know the kid. Nolan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. I see that. Mark looked between them, excitement bubbling over. Dad, he signed my notebook. Look. Nolan glanced at the autograph, then at Metro Man. His face remained neutral. Great. Metro Man chuckled, pushing himself up from the couch. Well, I should probably let you all get back to your evening. Don't want to hog the spotlight. Mark jumped up. Wait, are you coming back again? Metro Man clapped a hand lightly on his nephew's shoulder. Count on it, champ. He turned to Debbie with a nod. Thanks for the hospitality, ma'am. Debbie smiled faintly. Anytime. He moved toward the door, pausing briefly beside Nolan. We'll talk later. Nolan said nothing. Metro Man gave a casual two-finger salute and stepped outside. A moment later, the sound of rushing air filled the street as he lifted into the sky. Mark stood at the window, staring up until the white cape disappeared from view. His notebook was still clutched tightly in his hands, the signature bold on the page. He had an uncle. And not just any uncle. Metro Man Chapter 7, Back to the Penthouse. The wind rolled off me in every direction as I shot into the sky, white cape snapping against the air. The Grayson house was already gone beneath me, the whole street shrinking to a pinpoint. I gave Mark a smile and a promise, and I meant it. The kid had good energy. Excited, curious, respectful. A good kid. No wonder he was the one this whole story circled around. I stretched my arms out wide, let the city lights blur past, and then leaned forward just enough to push speed beyond what human eyes could ever catch. In less than a blink, in less than a fraction of a blink, I was already at my building. Less than 0.0000000000000000001 seconds. Home before anyone even noticed I left. Boots touched the balcony floor of the top penthouse. My cape swayed once, then stilled. The glass doors rattled faintly from the gust of air I'd dragged behind me. I slid them open and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the steady tick of the wall clock. I slipped off the gloves, set them on the stand beside the cape, and ran a hand through my hair. Another day in the books. I walked to the window and looked out over Metro City. Lights glowed across the skyline, traffic moved in neat lines down below. I could hear it all if I wanted to, every horn, every conversation, every scrape of shoes on the sidewalk. But I let it fade for now. My thoughts were on the Graysons. On Mark. The kid had come barreling toward me the second I stepped in the door. No hesitation. Just questions, wide eyes, and that eagerness you only got from someone young. He looked at me like I was larger than life. Not just a face on TV anymore, but real, sitting across from him, answering his questions. He didn't hold back either. Stronger than his dad? Do I visit often? Would I train him if he got powers? The kid went right for the big ones. He wanted answers, and he deserved them. I gave him what I could without pushing too far. And he lit up when I signed that notebook. Like I'd handed him something priceless. That alone told me what kind of boy he was. Mark wasn't jaded, wasn't cynical. He still had that spark. A good kid, through and through. I grabbed the guitar from the corner, strummed a lazy chord, let it ring out across the room. The sound was clean, crisp. My hearing caught the vibration bouncing off the walls, folding back into itself. I played a few more notes, easy and slow, not really a song, just noise to fill the space while I thought. Mark. No wonder he was the protagonist of all this. He had the right mix of innocence and drive. He wanted to know. He wanted to understand. And when his powers finally woke up, that drive would carry him straight into the middle of it all. I set the guitar back against the wall. Walked into the kitchen. Opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, cracked it open. I didn't need it, but the ritual mattered. Something grounding in the act of drinking. I leaned against the counter, sipping slowly, eyes still drifting toward the city. My brother, Nolan, was out there somewhere, probably already chewing over the fact that I'd come back so soon. He'd never admit it, but part of him had to know it was good for Mark. The kid deserved to know who I was, and what kind of family he had. We weren't the affectionate type. Never had been. But that didn't mean we didn't care. I cared about Nolan. And I cared about Mark now, too. I set the empty bottle down, walked back to the couch, and dropped into it with a sigh. Man, I said out loud, voice smooth and calm, that kid's gonna be something else. The room didn't answer, but I didn't need it to. I already knew. The hours ticked by, slow and steady. I stayed put in the apartment, cape hanging neat on the stand, boots kicked off by the couch. I flicked on the TV, let the channels roll one after another. News anchors chattered about robberies stopped, fires put out, traffic cleared all me, from earlier in the week. Clips of Metro Man smiling, waving, talking smooth into the cameras. Now those same clips meant more. Not just to the people out there watching, but to Mark. He'd be studying them. Replaying them. Trying to figure me out the same way he'd been trying to figure out his dad. I turned the volume down and let the images roll in silence. My thoughts stayed on him. Mark was smart. He was eager. He asked the kind of questions kids his age weren't supposed to ask. But he wasn't reckless. He listened. He respected the answers I gave him. That counted. That showed the kind of boy he was growing into. I pushed off the couch, stood again, and walked back to the balcony. Stepped outside into the night air. The wind was cool, brushing past the cape where it hung loose over my shoulders. I looked out across the city lights again, then tilted my head slightly, focusing my hearing. Voices across the city. Too many to count. Too many layers. But one stood out familiar, faint, carried through walls and streets. The Grayson household. Debbie's voice, calm, steady. Mark's voice, sharper, restless. Asking questions again. About me. I couldn't make out every word. I tuned back out, let the city fade again. Good kid, I muttered to myself, the smooth tone rolling out like a radio announcer. No wonder he's the center of it all. I smiled faintly. Then I turned, stepped back inside, and stretched once. My body barely noticed fatigue, but the motions mattered. Another day done. Another day closer to whatever came next. And next time, when I showed up at that house, I'd be ready for more of the kids' questions. Chapter 8, A Day on Patrol. The city was already awake by the time I stepped out onto my balcony. Sunlight glared off the windows across the street, cars crawled through intersections, and somewhere below, a news van was already parked, waiting for a story to break. Metro City never slowed down. That was fine by me. I liked having a stage that never closed. I rolled my shoulders once, tightened the gloves, and adjusted the cape. Then I lifted into the air, steady, smooth, the wind folding around me. The city stretched out in every direction, alive and restless. My ears picked up 100 things at once, but I filtered through them. People shouting at traffic, dogs barking, coffee machines hissing. Nothing urgent yet. I climbed higher, coasting above the skyline, cape snapping behind me. This was my routine. Patrol wasn't about flexing muscles. It was about being visible. People saw me, they felt safe. That was part of the job. It didn't take long before something pulled me down. The faint crackle of a fire alarm, 3 blocks away. The scream of a child from inside. I angled my arms forward and shot down, faster than the eye could track, but I slowed before touching down. You didn't smash into a scene like that. You landed calm, collected, cape falling just right. The apartment building was already smoking. A crowd gathered outside, firefighters pulling hoses, shouting orders. Heat licked at the sky through the top floor windows. "Metro Man," someone shouted, and the whole crowd turned. I gave them a confident smile. "Afternoon, folks. What do we got here?" One of the firefighters, helmet streaked with soot, rushed over. "Third floor, families trapped inside, stairwells blocked." "Say no more," I said smoothly. "I'll handle it." I blurred forward, through the front door, weaving past flames. Smoke clogged the hallways, but I didn't cough, didn't blink. My ears picked up the faint sound of crying. "Apartment 3C." I ripped the door off the hinges and stepped inside. A woman crouched with two kids pressed against her sides. Their eyes went wide when they saw me. "Metro Man," the woman gasped. "That's me," I said with a grin. "Time to get you out of here." I scooped the kids into one arm, lifted the mother with the other, and dashed back through the hallway. In less than a second, we were outside again, the crowd cheering as I set them down safely. "There we go," I said warmly. "Everyone safe and sound." The mother grabbed my hand, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." "Just doing my job, ma'am," I replied, tipping my head with a smile. The crowd clapped, cheered, phones out snapping pictures. I waved once, then rose back into the air. Next came a robbery. My ears caught the sharp sound of gunfire 6 blocks away. I pivoted, streaked across the sky, and slowed to hover above a jewelry store. 3 men rushed out, duffel bags stuffed with loot. They skidded to a stop when they saw me blocking the street. I crossed my arms. "Afternoon, gentlemen. Bit early for Christmas shopping, don't you think?" One of them raised a pistol. "Stay back." I smiled. "Not a chance." He fired. The bullets flattened harmlessly against my chest, falling to the ground with little clinks. The crowd across the street gasped. I raised a finger, wagging it playfully. Now. That's not gonna work." In a blink, I blurred forward, snatched the guns from their hands, crushed them into a ball of metal, and tossed it aside. I stacked the duffel bags neatly on the curb, then tied the 3 robbers together with a bent street sign. "Local police will be here in 3 minutes, I told them casually. "Enjoy the wait." The crowd erupted into cheers. I waved again, flashing the same easy grin. "Remember, folks, crime doesn't pay. But it sure does make for a quick workout." Phones captured every second. I let them. That was part of the job. By noon, I'd stopped a mugging, cleared traffic after a stalled bus blocked an intersection, and carried a tourist's lost camera back down from the roof of a skyscraper. Each time, the rhythm was the same: arrive smooth, handle it fast, leave with a smile. People wanted to see Metro Man confident, reliable, always in control. I landed in the middle of a park to take a short breather. Kids immediately swarmed me, running from the playground, shouting my name. "Metro Man! Can you sign my ball? Do the pose." I laughed, deep and easy. "All right, one at a time. No pushing." I signed a baseball, a backpack, even one kid's cast. I crouched down to eye level with the smallest boy, who stared at me with wide eyes. "Stay in school, champ," I said warmly, signing his notebook. "That's the real superpower." He grinned so wide his cheeks nearly split. Parents stood back, snapping pictures, smiling. I gave them all a wave before lifting back into the air. The afternoon heat settled over the city, but I didn't slow down. A construction site had a crane malfunction, steel beams dangling dangerously above workers. I swooped in, caught the beam with one hand, and lowered it safely to the ground. "Gotta be careful with your toys, fellas," I said, dusting off my gloves. "Wouldn't want anyone getting squashed." The workers laughed nervously, thanked me, and I waved them off before taking off again. Next, a traffic pile-up on the freeway. Cars crumpled, smoke rising, people shouting. I darted in, lifted vehicles out of the way, carried the injured to safety, and waved to the stunt drivers. "Let's try to keep rush hour under control, all right," I quipped, flashing that same smile. Everywhere I went, it was the same. Smiles, clapping, relief. The city loved Metro Man, and I gave them what they needed. By evening, I returned to the penthouse. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline orange. I stepped inside, set my gloves and cape aside again, and dropped onto the couch with a long sigh. "Another day," I muttered in that smooth voice, stretching out. I turned on the TV. News anchors replayed my day already. Footage of the fire, the robbery, the construction site. Clips of me smiling, waving, cracking jokes. Reporters spoke about how safe the city was thanks to Metro Man. I smirked. Looks like the brand's still strong. But my mind wandered back to Mark. The way he looked at me yesterday, and today. Excited, eager, full of questions. A good kid. Curious. I leaned back, arms behind my head, and let the news keep playing. Another day in the city, another day as Metro Man. The stage was mine, and I played the part the way only I could. Chapter 9, Dinner with the Graysons. The sun was already dipping low when I touched down on the Graysons' front lawn. I landed soft, letting the cape fall neatly behind me. I didn't bother knocking at super speed this time, I wanted them to hear me. This wasn't a rescue. It was a family visit. I stepped up onto the porch and rapped 3 firm knocks on the door. A moment later, Debbie opened it. She looked surprised for only a second, then smiled faintly. "Metro Man. Back again." I flashed her my smooth grin. "Couldn't stay away, ma'am. Smelled dinner cooking from all the way across town. Thought I'd invite myself." She chuckled softly and stepped aside. "Well, you're in luck. We made plenty. Come in." I ducked my head and stepped through the doorway. The smell hit me immediately: roast chicken, garlic bread, vegetables simmering on the stove. Human meals didn't do anything for me, but the effort mattered. From the living room, Mark bolted up the stairs, nearly tripping over his own feet in his rush. "Mom, is he?" He froze when he saw me standing there. His eyes lit up. "Uncle Metro Man. You came back." "Sure did, kid," I said, voice smooth and casual. "Wouldn't miss it. Besides, your mom promised dinner." Mark grinned wide. "This is so cool." I walked into the dining room, cape brushing against the doorway. The table was already set: 4 plates, silverware neatly lined, glasses waiting. Debbie moved back into the kitchen, checking the oven. "Sit wherever you'd like," she said. I lowered myself into a chair, leaning back comfortably. Mark slid into the seat across from me, bouncing his knee with restless energy. His notebook, the one I'd signed, wasn't far from reach. I noticed. The front door opened again. Nolan stepped in, suit jacket over his shoulder. His eyes locked on me right away. He paused, his jaw tightening slightly. "Metro Man," he said evenly. "Didn't expect you tonight." I gave him an easy smile. "Evening, brother. You know me, always full of surprises." He didn't answer. He just set his jacket on the rack and moved into the dining room. Debbie pulled the chicken from the oven, set it down on the table, and sat beside Nolan. "All right," she said, smiling lightly. "Dinner's ready." The 4 of us sat at the table. It was quiet for a moment as Debbie served plates, the scrape of utensils filling the air. Then Mark couldn't hold back. "So, Uncle Metro Man," he blurted, "how long have you been a hero?" I chuckled, deep and smooth. "Since the beginning, kid. Day 1. Some folks just start out running, and some of us start out flying. You could say I never looked back." Mark leaned forward. "So even when you were young, you were already doing this?" "You bet," I said with an easy grin. "Saving the day doesn't come with a handbook. You just get out there and do it." Debbie set a slice of chicken on my plate. I nodded to her. "Thanks, ma'am." She smiled faintly. "Of course." Mark dug in right away but kept talking between bites. "Do you and Dad ever work together? Like, as a team?" I raised an eyebrow, glancing at Nolan. "Once in a while. Big threats, citywide problems. When the stakes get high, we both show up. 2-for-1 deal." Mark's eyes widened. "That must be amazing. The two strongest heroes, side by side." "Gets the job done," I said simply, voice smooth. "Crowd loves it, too." Nolan stayed quiet, cutting into his food with precise movements. Mark didn't notice. He was too busy firing off the next question. "So, you can fly, you've got super strength, super speed, is there anything you can't do?" I laughed, leaning back in my chair. "Plenty, kid. I don't cook, for one. Trust me, you don't want me near a stove." Mark laughed with me. "Seriously though?" "Seriously," I said, tapping my chin with a gloved finger. "Well, let's just say I do what I can. Nobody's perfect. But when people need help, I'm there. That's the job." Mark nodded quickly. "Do you ever get tired of it?" "Not really," I said smoothly. "Every rescue, every smile, every thank you, it's all part of the gig. People count on me, and I count on them counting on me. Keeps me moving." Debbie's eyes softened. She glanced at Nolan, who kept eating quietly. Mark leaned in again. "Do people ever, not like you?" I raised my eyebrows. "Sure. Can't please everyone. Some folks think I show off too much. Some think I'm too flashy. Doesn't bother me. I'm not here to win everyone over, I'm here to keep people safe." Mark grinned. "I like that. You're way cooler than I thought you'd be." I smirked. High praise, coming from my nephew. He beamed. "So, what's it like, being brothers with Dad? Were you guys close?" The table went quiet. Debbie glanced between us, waiting. Nolan's fork paused mid-cut. I leaned back, folding my arms casually. "We grew up together. Different styles, same goal. Close enough." Nolan finally spoke, his voice flat. "We get along when we need to." Mark frowned slightly. "So, not really close?" Nolan's jaw tightened. "We don't need to be." I broke the tension with a smooth chuckle. "Don't overthink it, kid. Families come in all shapes. Some talk every day, some don't. What matters is we've got each other's backs when it counts." Mark relaxed a little, then grinned again. "Yeah. That makes sense." The table fell into the rhythm of dinner after that. Plates filled, forks scraped, glasses clinked. Mark asked a dozen more questions. "Do you ever get scared?" "Nope." "Who's the toughest villain you've fought?" "Hard to pick. Bad guys don't exactly keep score." "Do you like living in the city?" "Wouldn't trade it for anything." Each answer came smooth, calm, steady. I gave him what he wanted, straightforward, confident, never dramatic. Debbie watched quietly, smiling now and then at how animated her son was. Nolan stayed reserved, but his eyes never strayed far from me. By the time the plates were nearly empty, Mark was practically glowing. "This is the best dinner ever." I smirked. Glad I could help spice things up. Debbie started clearing plates. "You're welcome back anytime, Metro Man. It's nice having family at the table." I nodded, giving her a smooth smile. "Appreciate that, ma'am." Mark leaned forward eagerly. "You'll come back, right?" I stood, brushing off my cape. "Count on it, champ." His grin widened. Nolan rose too, voice even. "We'll see you around." I gave him a small nod, then turned to Mark. "Keep that notebook safe. Someday you'll be showing it off to your kids." Mark laughed. "I will." I walked to the door, waved once more to Debbie, and stepped out into the evening air. The sky was streaked orange and purple, the city lights flickering on in the distance. I rose into the air slowly, cape billowing, and gave one last glance back at the house. Through the window, I saw Mark rushing to the table to grab his notebook, flipping to the page I'd signed. His smile said everything. Then I shot upward, vanishing into the sky. Chapter 10, Schoolyard Secrets. The next day at school started the same as always. The hallways were crowded, lockers slammed shut, and voices carried in every direction. But for Mark, everything felt different. He'd just had dinner with Metro Man, his uncle. He'd sat across the table from him, asked him questions, listened to him answer in that smooth, confident voice. It was still hard to believe it had really happened. Mark walked down the hallway, clutching his notebook a little tighter than usual. Inside, the autograph Metro Man had signed stood out bold and clean. He'd already flipped to that page 3 times this morning, just to make sure it was still there. He spotted William at his locker. William slammed it shut, books tucked under one arm, and glanced over when he saw Mark coming. "You look like you just won the lottery," William said. Mark grinned. "Better. You won't believe what happened last night." William raised an eyebrow. "Oh no. Don't tell me. You actually had dinner with him?" Mark nodded quickly. "Yep. Right at my house. At our table. Real food and everything." William's eyes widened. "No way. No way, man. You're lying." "I'm not," Mark insisted, lowering his voice but unable to stop smiling. He showed up again. Mom invited him to stay. We all sat down and ate together. I got to ask him whatever I wanted." William shook his head, trying to process it. "Dude. That's insane. He's, like, the biggest hero in the world. And he was just sitting at your dinner table." Mark pulled the notebook from his bag and opened it carefully. He held it out for William to see the bold signature scrawled across the first page. "Still got this too," Mark said proudly. William stared at it, eyes wide. Okay. Okay, wow. That's real. That's definitely real. You really are his nephew." Mark nodded, feeling that same rush of pride. William leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "So what's he like? Tell me everything. Did he talk like he does on TV?" Mark grinned. "Exactly the same. Smooth, confident, making jokes, just him. No act. He's just always like that." William looked like his head was going to explode. "You got to sit across from Metro Man while eating dinner. That's like eating with Superman or something. Did he say anything about me?" Mark laughed. "No, sorry." William groaned. "Figures. Still, that's incredible." Before Mark could answer, Amber walked up, sliding into the conversation with her usual confident stride. She looked between the two of them, suspicious. "What are you two whispering about?" she asked. William straightened quickly. Nothing. Just school stuff." Amber smirked. "Right. School stuff makes you look like you've both seen a ghost." Mark hesitated, then shrugged, playing it cool. "It's not a big deal. I just ran into Metro Man again." Amber's eyes widened slightly. "Again? You've seen him more than once." Mark nodded. "Yeah. Got lucky, I guess. He came by the neighborhood. Stopped in. He even signed my notebook." Amber's eyebrows shot up. "No way. Let me see." Mark hesitated, then held it out. She flipped to the page, staring at the bold autograph. "Wow. That's really his signature. I saw one once at an event downtown. Exactly the same." William gave Mark a side-eye look, but Mark kept his expression neutral. Amber handed the notebook back. "That's crazy. You're seriously the luckiest guy in school. First you meet him, now he's signing stuff for you. What's next? He takes you on patrol." Mark laughed lightly. "Doubt it. But yeah, it's been pretty cool." Amber grinned. "Cool? That's more than cool. That's amazing." The bell rang before she could say more. Students shuffled toward their classrooms, and Amber walked ahead. William leaned close to Mark as they followed. "Smooth," William muttered. "You almost slipped. Good save." Mark whispered back, "She doesn't need to know everything." William nodded quickly. "Yeah. Keep that uncle thing locked up. But man, this is wild." Classes dragged again, but Mark barely noticed. His mind kept circling back to the dinner table. Metro Man sitting there, answering his questions, laughing, making the whole room feel lighter. For Mark, it was surreal. For everyone else, Metro Man was just an untouchable hero on TV. For him, it was family. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed as usual. Mark sat with William and Amber at their usual table. Amber was still hung up on the autograph. "So, what did he say when he signed it?" she asked, biting into her sandwich. Mark shrugged casually. "Just told me to keep it safe. Said it might be worth more than my allowance one day." Amber laughed. "That sounds exactly like him. Always joking." William grinned, nudging Mark. "What else did he say last night?" Mark glanced at Amber, then back at William. "We just talked about hero stuff. How long he's been doing it, what it's like. You know, questions I've always wanted to ask." Amber leaned forward, interested. "And he actually answered you? He wasn't all secretive or mysterious?" "Nope," Mark said. "Straight answers. He's really easy to talk to." Amber smiled faintly. "I always thought so. You can tell, even on TV. He's not like Omni-Man. Omni-Man's all serious, barely ever smiles. Metro Man actually looks like he enjoys what he does." Mark's stomach twisted for a second. He forced a smile. "Yeah. He definitely has fun with it." Amber sat back. "That's awesome. Seriously, Mark, I'm jealous. Most people never even see him in person. You've met him twice." William chuckled. "Mark doesn't just meet him. They have dinner together." Mark's eyes widened. "William." Amber blinked. "Dinner." William froze, realizing what he'd said. I mean, like he probably had dinner before signing the notebook, right? You know, grabbed a bite in the neighborhood or something." Amber laughed. "Yeah, sure. Metro Man, just casually eating takeout down the street. I'd believe it, though. Guy seems like he'd do anything. Mark exhaled quietly in relief. Yeah. Something like that. William shot him a look. Mark shook his head slightly, warning him to be careful. Amber went back to eating, still smiling. Still. That's incredible. Next time you see him, tell him Amber Bennett says hi. Mark smirked. I'll keep that in mind. The rest of the day slipped by, but the excitement didn't fade. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that things were changing. He had a connection no one else did. And for the first time, he felt proud to carry it. When the final bell rang, he and William walked out together. Amber waved goodbye, heading in the opposite direction. William waited until she was out of earshot. Close one. Mark nodded. Yeah. Gotta be careful. William grinned. Still, though. I can't believe it. Dinner with Metro Man. Twice. Mark smiled faintly. Yeah. It was pretty great. And in his chest, the excitement burned bright. Chapter 11, Burger Mart Breakthrough. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Metro City when I landed outside Burger Mart. Not with a streak of light, not breaking the sound barrier, just a simple, casual touchdown on the sidewalk. White cape swaying, boots settling against the pavement. The smell hit immediately: grease, fries, burgers on the grill. A line of customers stretched halfway out the door. I didn't mind. This wasn't about food. I stepped inside. The chatter fell quiet, heads turned, and phones whipped out. A couple of kids nearly dropped their sodas when they recognized me. Metro Man, someone shouted. I raised a hand, flashing the smooth grin. That's me. Don't mind me, folks, just here for a little lunch. The line parted without a word. I strolled right up to the counter, cape brushing against my boots. Behind it, two cashiers stared like deer in headlights. Afternoon, gentlemen, I said in that rich, confident tone. I'll take one of those burger specials. Extra pickles. And throw in some fries. Gotta keep the energy up, you know. One cashier fumbled for the buttons, nodding furiously. Why yes, sir. Right away. I tapped the counter lightly, still smiling. Appreciate it. As I stood waiting, I let my hearing spread out. Beyond the chatter of the dining area, beyond the sizzling of patties on the grill, there it was, Mark's voice, faint, from the back. Frustrated, muttering to himself as he hauled bags of trash. I didn't move yet. Just leaned casually against the counter until my tray arrived. The food meant nothing to me, but it was part of the cover. I carried it toward the back door like I had every right to be there. No one stopped me. Who was going to stop Metro Man? The kitchen staff froze when I pushed the door open. Grease popped on the grill, steam rose from fryers, and every pair of eyes landed on me. Don't mind me, folks, I said smoothly. Just checking in on an Employee of the Month contender. A couple of nervous laughs followed. I walked past them all without hurry, tray balanced in one hand, cape trailing behind. In the alley out back, I found him. Mark Grayson, hoodie sleeves rolled up, dragging two bags of garbage toward the dumpster. He groaned, muttering under his breath. Of course I get stuck with this, always me. Then it happened. He lifted the bags, swung them up, and the whole load soared like it weighed nothing. The bags crashed against the side of the dumpster, one bursting open, trash scattering. Mark froze, staring down at his hands in shock. I leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching. My smile widened. Well, I said, smooth and calm. Looks like someone just leveled up. Mark spun around, eyes wide. Uncle Metro Man. That's me, kid. I straightened, still smiling. Heard you were working hard out here. Figured I'd swing by, grab a burger, and see how you're holding up. Mark's hands shook as he pointed at the dumpster. Did you see that? I didn't even. Yeah, I said, voice warm and confident. I saw. Congrats, champ. Welcome to the club. He blinked, still stunned. I have powers? This is insane. Not insane, I said easily. Just natural. Knew it would happen sooner or later. Your dad probably did too. Mark's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. So I'm, like you? And Dad? I smirked. Exactly like us. Strong, fast, the whole package. Trust me, kid, you're about to find out what you can really do. The kitchen door creaked open behind us. Mark's manager stepped into the alley, wiping his hands on his apron. He froze when he saw me standing there. Metro Man, he stammered. What are you doing? I stepped forward smoothly, clapping a hand on his shoulder. Afternoon, sir. Mark here's got some important business to take care of. Family business. I'm gonna need him for the rest of the day. The manager's eyes darted from me to Mark, then back. He nodded rapidly, his whole body stiff. Of course. Take him. Whatever you need. He's yours. Appreciate it, I said with a grin. You're a good man. The manager backed away, still nodding, before ducking back into the kitchen. The door swung shut. Mark gaped at me. He let me go? Just like that. I smirked, straightening my cape. Perks of the job, kid. Now let's get you home. Your folks need to hear about this. Mark still looked half in shock, half in awe, but he followed me out of the alley. I rose into the air slowly, then extended a hand down to him. Come on, champ, I said smoothly. Time for your first flight. He hesitated, then grabbed my hand. I pulled him up, holding him steady against my side, and we soared into the sky. The ground fell away in seconds, the burger mart shrinking beneath us. Mark gasped, clutching my arm. Oh man, oh man, oh man, this is insane. Relax, kid, I said with a chuckle. Enjoy the view. The city stretched beneath us, every building glowing in the late afternoon sun. Mark's eyes were wide, his mouth open in awe. This is incredible, he whispered. Get used to it, I said. This is your life now. It took only moments to reach the Grayson house, but I slowed before landing, letting Mark take in the ride. We touched down softly on the front lawn. Mark stumbled, still gripping my arm, then laughed nervously. That was, wow. I smirked. Not bad for your first time. The front door opened before we even knocked. Debbie stood there, wiping her hands on a towel, confusion on her face. Metro Man? Mark? What's going on? Afternoon, ma'am, I said smoothly, guiding Mark forward. Got some big news. Thought it was best to deliver it in person. Nolan appeared behind her, his expression sharpening instantly when he saw me. What is it? Mark stepped forward, blurting out, Dad. Mom. I think I got powers. Debbie gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Nolan's eyes narrowed. What? I was at work, Mark said quickly. Out back with the trash. And then it just happened. I threw the bags like they weighed nothing. Uncle Metro Man saw it. I crossed my arms, smiling. Kids telling the truth. Saw the whole thing. Strong toss. Messy landing, but hey, first time's first time. Debbie's eyes filled with emotion, though she kept her voice calm. Oh, Mark. Nolan stepped closer, eyes locked on his son. So it's starting. Mark blinked. Starting. Nolan glanced at me, then back to Mark. Your powers. They've awakened. Mark looked between the three of us, overwhelmed. This is really happening. I'm like you guys. Exactly, I said warmly. Welcome to the family business, champ. Mark grinned, his excitement bubbling over. This is amazing. Debbie pulled him into a hug, her voice soft. We're proud of you, Mark. Nolan's face stayed neutral, but his eyes lingered on his son. I gave them all the smooth smile, voice steady. Thought you'd want to know right away. No sense keeping this under wraps. Debbie nodded, still holding her son. Nolan exhaled slowly. Thank you. For bringing him. I tipped my head. Anytime, brother. Mark looked at me, eyes bright. What happens now? I chuckled. Now? Now you train. You figure out what you can do. And trust me, it's gonna be one hell of a ride. Chapter 12, Brothers in the Quiet. The house had settled again. Debbie had gone upstairs to check on Mark, who was still buzzing with excitement over what he'd just discovered. His footsteps paced back and forth across his bedroom floor, his voice carrying faintly as he talked to himself, testing the feel of his new strength. Downstairs, the air was quieter. I stood in the living room, hands folded loosely behind my back, cape falling still against my shoulders. Nolan stood across from me, near the window, arms crossed. The light from outside cut across his face, sharp and steady. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Well, I said finally, voice smooth, relaxed, like I was just making conversation. Kids got it. No question about it. Tossed those trash bags like they were feathers. Nolan's eyes narrowed faintly. I knew it would come. Just a matter of time. I smirked. Yeah. But still something to see. First time's always special. He didn't answer. He just stared out the window, jaw tight. I stepped closer, lowering my voice a notch. You know, brother, now that it's started, maybe it's time we had a real talk. Nolan glanced at me, his expression cool. About what? You know what, I said. My tone was light, but the weight was there underneath. The mission. The Empire. All of it. He didn't flinch. There's nothing to talk about. The mission stands. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. You're still holding on to that? After all this time? Yes. His voice was firm, unshaken. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. Nolan, listen. I'm not here to start a fight. I'm not here to argue. But let's be honest with each other for once. You've been on this planet a long time. You've got a family. A son. You really gonna throw all that away just to finish what the Empire told us to do? Nolan's jaw tightened. It's not about throwing anything away. It's about doing my duty. You know what we were raised for. You know what's expected of us. I stepped closer, my tone still smooth but sharper now. Yeah, I know. Conquer. Expand. Bring worlds under control. That's the job. But I'm telling you right now I'm done with it. Earth's not just another target to me. It's not a stepping stone. I'm not here to soften it up for anyone. Nolan's eyes locked onto mine, hard and steady. You're betraying your purpose. I smirked faintly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just making my own choices for once. The silence stretched. I kept my voice calm. Look, brother, I'm not gonna stand in your way. I'm not gonna make this some big showdown. You've got your path, I've got mine. But I need you to hear me. You don't have to do this. You don't have to keep following orders from a people that would have left you behind without a second thought. His fists clenched briefly at his sides. You don't understand. This is bigger than you or me. Bigger than family. I shook my head slowly. No, Nolan. Family's bigger than all of it. You've got a wife upstairs who trusts you with her whole heart. You've got a son who just found out he's like us, and he's looking at you for guidance. For answers. You tell me the mission matters more than them. He didn't answer right away. His gaze flicked toward the ceiling, where Mark's footsteps still moved restlessly. His jaw shifted, but his voice stayed cold. He'll understand, when the time comes. I sighed, keeping the charm in my tone but letting the edge show. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But I'll tell you this, Nolan, you keep walking this path, you're gonna lose them both. That's not a threat. That's just the truth. He turned back to me, eyes burning. And what, you'll stop me? I gave him a calm, steady smile. No. I told you. I'm not here to fight you. You're my brother. I'm not killing you, and I'm not helping you either. Whatever you do, that's on you. The tension in the air was thick, but I didn't flinch. I just kept that easy Metro Man posture, arms loose, voice smooth. I'm not the Empire's soldier anymore, I said firmly. I'm Metro Man. I protect this planet because I want to, not because someone told me to. You want to keep marching to the Empire's drum, that's your choice. But don't expect me to join in. Nolan's eyes narrowed. So you'll just watch? Stand aside while I finish what needs to be done. Exactly, I said. I won't help you, but I won't stop you. Not unless you come after me directly. He stared at me, silent, calculating. I leaned closer slightly, my voice dropping lower. But I'll give you some advice, brother. Spend time with your family while you still can. Debbie, Mark, they won't be here forever if you keep this up. Use the time you've got. Don't waste it. For the first time, something flickered in Nolan's eyes. A hesitation. A wait. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He straightened, crossing his arms again. You've made your choice, he said flatly. And so have you, I replied smoothly. The sound of footsteps creaked on the stairs. Debbie's voice carried softly. Mark's still so excited. He's barely sitting still. Both of us turned our heads slightly toward the sound. Nolan's face softened just a fraction before hardening again. I looked back at him, giving him one last easy smile. Think about what I said, brother. That's all. Then I stepped away, adjusted my cape, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Nolan asked, his voice still hard. Back to the city, I said, smooth and confident as ever. Stage never sleeps. But I'll be around. You know that. I gave him a casual two-finger salute, opened the door, and stepped outside into the evening air. The door closed behind me. The house was quiet again. Chapter 13, Back on the Streets. I left the Grayson place with my cape dragging a little in the wind, the evening air rolling over me as I rose into the sky. The sun was setting, painting the city in orange light, traffic crawling down below like it always did. From up here, everything looked calm. But I knew better. Cities never stayed calm for long. My brother and I had just had our little talk. He was still set on his mission. Fine. I'd said my piece. I wasn't going to fight him, wasn't going to help him either. That was his road to walk. Mine was here, with the city. Keeping things running. Keeping people safe. I angled down, cape catching the air, and slowed over the first busy street. Cars honked, people pointed, phones came out. Metro Man, someone shouted. I waved, gave them the easy smile, and kept floating along. The city needed to see me. That was half the job. Didn't take long before something popped up. My ears caught it first, the sharp crash of metal, glass breaking, people screaming. 3 blocks south. I tilted forward and zipped down, slowing just as I reached the scene. A delivery truck had swerved onto the sidewalk, pinning 2 cars against a storefront. Smoke poured from the hood, alarms blaring. A man pounded against a jammed car door, shouting for help. I touched down smooth, boots hitting pavement, cape falling perfectly behind me. All right, folks, let's clear some space. My voice carried steady and calm. I've got this. The crowd shuffled back without hesitation. I walked up to the first car, braced one hand under the crushed door, and ripped it clean off. The driver stumbled out, coughing. Thanks, he wheezed. I clapped his shoulder with an easy grin. No problem. Drive safe next time. The second car was worse. The hood was bent, the windshield cracked through. A young woman was trapped inside, clutching the steering wheel. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Don't worry, ma'am, I said smoothly. You're in good hands. I pressed both palms against the metal and bent the frame outward like it was tin foil. She gasped as the pressure released. I opened the door gently and helped her out, steadying her as she stepped away. The crowd clapped, some cheering, some crying. I raised a hand in acknowledgement, keeping the calm smile. Then I turned to the truck. Smoke was thick, flames licking from the engine. Inside, the driver slumped over the wheel. I ripped the door away and lifted him out easily, carrying him back to the curb. Paramedics rushed forward, taking him from my arms. All yours, folks, I said with a nod. More clapping, more cheers. Phones everywhere. I waved once more before lifting back into the sky. Patrol moved on. I didn't rush. I kept it steady, letting people see me. That was important. Visibility mattered. A few blocks later, I caught the sound of shouting. An alley off 4th Street. I angled down, hovering just above the ground. 3 men had a kid cornered against a wall, knives flashing in their hands. All right, boys, I called out, smooth as ever. Drop the cutlery and step back. They spun around, eyes wide. One of them cursed. It's him. I touched down, hands on my hips. That's right. So what's it gonna be? You walking out of here, or am I carrying you to the nearest squad car? They glanced at each other, then lunged. I sighed lightly, still smiling, and blurred forward. In less than a blink, I'd taken the knives, snapped them in half, and tied the 3 men together with a bent fire escape ladder. The kid blinked, stunned. You all right, champ? I asked, crouching to eye level. He nodded quickly. Why yet? Thanks. Good, I said, giving him a pat on the shoulder. Head home. Tell your folks Metro Man says hi. The kid smiled nervously before running off. I turned back to the would-be muggers. Police will be here in 2 minutes. Enjoy the wait. Then I rose back into the air, leaving them behind. By the time night settled in, I'd stopped 3 more incidents. A fire escape about to collapse, a purse snatcher sprinting through downtown, and a bus with failing brakes. Each time, I kept the same rhythm. Show up calm, handle it fast, leave with a smile. People expected consistency from Metro Man. They got it. I touched down briefly on the roof of City Hall, cape whipping in the wind. From here, I could see nearly the whole downtown stretch, lit up in neon and headlights. The city felt alive, restless. I leaned against the edge, arms crossed loosely. Down below, reporters were already recapping the truck crash from earlier. My face was on the screen through a shop window, my voice replayed in the background. Everyone safe and sound. The crowd in the clip cheered. I smirked. Still got it. My ears caught another sound then. A police scanner call from the west side. Armed robbery. 5 suspects, masks, getaway van. I pushed off the roof and shot across the skyline, slowing only when I reached the street. The van was already speeding off, tires screeching. I floated down in front of it, arms folded. The driver saw me and panicked, slamming the brakes. The van skidded, tires smoking, before stopping inches from me. I strolled up, smooth as ever, and yanked the side door clean off. 5 men inside froze, bags of cash clutched in their hands. "Evening, fellas," I said casually. "Nice night for a drive, hey? Shame about the stolen money." They scrambled, some reaching for guns. I blurred forward, took them all in one sweep, and stacked them neatly on the curb. I piled the bags beside them, then bent a nearby street light to pin them down. "Sit tight," I told them with a grin. "Law enforcement will be here any second." The crowd gathering on the sidewalks erupted in cheers. Phones flashed, people shouted my name. I waved once, then lifted back into the night sky. The patrol kept rolling until midnight. Dozens of small rescues, every one of them handled the same way. Calm, steady, efficient. I never broke a sweat, never let the charm slip. That was the brand, and it worked. Finally, I drifted back toward my penthouse. I touched down on the balcony, stepped inside, and set the gloves aside. The apartment was quiet, the city noise muffled through the glass. I sat down on the couch, leaning back, letting the cape drape over the cushions. "Not bad," I said to myself, voice smooth and steady. "Cities in one piece. People smiling. Stage well played." I picked up the remote, flicked on the TV. News anchors were still talking about the truck crash, the robbery, the alley rescue. Clips rolled of me smiling, waving, delivering lines with the same easy tone. Public loved it. They always did. But in the back of my mind, my brother's voice lingered. His cold insistence on the mission. His refusal to let it go. I sighed quietly, then smirked to myself. He'll figure it out. Or he won't. Either way, the city's still mine to look after. I leaned back, closed my eyes briefly, and let the quiet settle around me. Tomorrow, there'd be more to do. There always was. Chapter 14, First Steps into Power. The next morning, the air was clear, the sun sharp against the skyline. I floated above the city, cape falling loose, letting my hearing stretch across the blocks. Sirens, traffic, laughter, shouts, all the usual. Nothing urgent. That gave me the time to head back toward the Grayson household. I knew what was coming today. Nolan wouldn't waste time now that Mark had awakened his powers. The first training session. Every Viltrumite had one. The sooner the abilities were put to work, the sooner the boy would get control of them. I slowed as I reached the suburbs, touched down casually on the Graysons' lawn, and knocked once on the door. Debbie opened it, surprised again, though less than before. "Metro Man," she said, smiling faintly. "You're back." I gave her the easy grin. "Morning, ma'am. Thought I'd check in." Big day for your boy. Her eyes softened. He's barely stopped talking about it since last night. Behind her, Mark came rushing down the stairs, nearly tripping in his excitement. Uncle Metro Man! You came back. That's me, kid, I said smoothly. Wouldn't miss your first big test. Mark grinned ear to ear. This is gonna be awesome. Nolan stepped in from the living room, arms crossed, his expression calm but firm. He didn't look surprised to see me. We're heading out back, he said flatly. I gestured with one hand. Lead the way. The backyard stretched wide with trimmed grass and a tall fence. Open enough to start. Nolan stood with his arms behind his back, posture rigid. Mark bounced on his feet, too restless to stand still. I stayed off to the side, hands on my hips, cape swaying in the breeze. All right, Nolan began, voice steady. Mark, today we start simple. Flying. Everything else builds from that. Mark nodded quickly. Okay. How do I do it? Focus, Nolan said. It's not about muscle. It's instinct. You already have the power, you just have to use it. Mark looked uncertain. Instinct. Right. Watch, Nolan said. He lifted smoothly into the air, hovering above the grass without effort. It's no different for you. Mark crouched slightly, then jumped. He cleared a few feet before hitting the ground again, stumbling forward. I chuckled lightly. Good hang time, champ. Little rough on the landing. Mark shot me a sheepish grin. Yet. Not exactly graceful. Nolan's tone was firm. Again. Mark nodded, setting his jaw. He crouched deeper, pushed harder. This time, he got higher, his feet leaving the ground for a full second before he came down. Better, Nolan said. Keep going. Mark tried again and again. Each jump took him higher, longer. His face grew more determined with every attempt. Finally, after a dozen tries, he stayed up. Wobbly, uneven, but floating. I'm doing it. Mark shouted, his grin wide. Steady, Nolan instructed. Control it. Balance your body. Mark flailed briefly before righting himself. He rose a little higher, arms out like he was balancing on a beam. I clapped slowly, voice smooth. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. First flight's always the hardest. Mark laughed, exhilarated. This feels amazing. Don't get distracted, Nolan said firmly. Control is everything. Mark nodded, focusing, trying to hover still. He dipped once, then corrected. After a few moments, he steadied himself enough to look back at us. Okay, what's next? Forward motion, Nolan said. He floated higher, then shot forward in a controlled streak before circling back. It's simple. You just move where you want to go. Your body will follow. Mark hesitated, then leaned forward. He shot off suddenly, faster than he expected, and crashed straight into the fence. The wood splintered, the panel collapsing. Ow, Mark muttered, climbing out of the mess. I chuckled, shaking my head. Good enthusiasm, champ. Needs some polish, though. Mark brushed himself off, cheeks red. Yeah, I noticed. Again, Nolan ordered. Mark took off once more. This time, he tried to pace himself, but he still veered off to the side, clipping a tree before spinning out and landing face first in the grass. Debbie peeked out the back door, wincing. Is he okay? I gave her a reassuring grin. He's fine, ma'am. Just learning the ropes. Mark pushed himself up, grass stuck to his shirt. I'm good. Then get back up, Nolan said firmly. You won't learn by falling and staying down. Mark groaned but jumped again, rising into the air. He leaned forward cautiously this time, moving slower. His path wobbled, but he stayed in the air longer. That's it, Nolan said. Better. Keep practicing. Mark circled clumsily, then tried again, each attempt steadier than the last. After 20 minutes, he was flying in uneven loops, laughing between breaths. This is incredible, he shouted down. Keep your focus, Nolan reminded. You're not finished yet. I called up, smiling. Looks good from here, champ. You'll be pulling tricks in no time. Mark grinned wide, circling once more before landing in the yard, stumbling but upright. Sweat dotted his forehead, but he looked thrilled. That was awesome, he said, panting. Nolan nodded. Not perfect. But you're improving. Next, strength. Mark's eyes lit up. Strength? Nolan pointed to a large rock near the fence. Pick it up. Mark walked over, crouched, and gripped the rock. He strained for a moment, then lifted. The whole thing came up like it was nothing. Mark's eyes widened. Whoa! Good, Nolan said. Now higher. Mark raised it over his head, grinning. This is crazy. I smirked. Careful, champ. Don't drop it on your toes. Mark laughed, then tossed the rock forward. It sailed across the yard, landing with a heavy crash. Debbie gasped from the doorway. Mark. I'm fine, Mom, he shouted back, still grinning. Again, Nolan said. Mark picked up another object, a garden bench this time, and hoisted it like it weighed nothing. He tried pressing it overhead, wobbling slightly before steadying. Better, Nolan said. You'll build control with practice. Mark set it down carefully, then flexed his fingers. This is insane. I feel like I could lift anything. I smirked. Don't test that theory just yet, champ. Start small. Mark laughed. Yeah, okay. For the next hour, Nolan drilled him. Lifting, throwing, balancing in the air. Mark stumbled, crashed, and fell more times than not, but he always got back up, always tried again. The determination in his eyes was clear. Finally, Nolan raised a hand. That's enough for today. Mark landed, panting heavily, sweat clinging to his shirt. His grin hadn't faded. That was amazing. I can't believe I can actually do this. Nolan's tone stayed firm. You're only beginning. Don't get comfortable. Mark nodded quickly. I won't. I stepped forward, voice smooth and warm. Not bad for day one, kid. Not bad at all. You'll get better. Just keep showing up. Mark beamed. Thanks, Uncle Metro Man. Anytime, I said with a grin. Debbie stepped out further, smiling gently despite her worry. He did well. He did, I agreed. Nolan gave a short nod. We'll continue tomorrow. Mark's grin widened. Can't wait. The training session ended there, the sun sinking lower as we all headed back inside. Mark was still buzzing with energy despite the exhaustion. Nolan stayed composed, Debbie watched quietly, and I kept my easy smile. First day done. The kid was on his way. Chapter 15, another night on duty. After leaving the Grayson house, I didn't go straight home. Mark was still buzzing with energy upstairs, stumbling around his room and laughing at himself every time he tried a jump. Debbie kept her smile soft even while worrying, and Nolan stayed as firm as ever. I knew my role there was done for the day. The rest belonged to them. For me, the city always came next. I floated above the neighborhood and picked up speed once I hit downtown. By then, the sky was dimming into night, the glow of streetlights taking over. Horns blared from packed intersections, music spilled out of restaurants, and the sidewalks filled with people pointing up as soon as they noticed me. "Metro Man," a group shouted from the corner. I waved smoothly, lowering my voice as I glided by. "Evening, folks. Stay safe." Cameras clicked, phones filmed, hands waved back. That was part of it, just being seen. It calmed people down before I even had to act. The first real call came quick. My hearing caught it, sirens already screaming, dispatch talking over radios, and in the middle of it, the heavy crackle of fire. An apartment complex. 4 blocks away. I was there in seconds. The top floor burned hot, smoke spilling out. Families crowded the street, some crying, others shouting names. Firefighters sprayed water, but it wasn't enough. One of them spotted me through the haze and pointed up. "Metro Man. People are still inside." I touched down beside him, voice steady. "Which floor?" "Top. 2 kids and their mother, far side." "Got it." I took off without another word, cape dragging flames aside as I flew through a broken window. Heat pressed heavy inside. A woman clutched her kids in the corner, coughing hard, eyes wide when she saw me. "You're safe now," I told her. "Calm. Smooth. Hold tight." She nodded quickly, clutching her children closer as I scooped them all into my arms. I flew out and landed on the street, setting them down in front of the firefighters. The mother hugged her kids tight, tears cutting through the ash on her cheeks. "Thank you," she said, breathless. "Anytime, ma'am," I answered with the same steady tone. The crowd cheered, people crying and clapping. The firefighters surged forward to help the family. I turned back toward the flames. The crew needed more time, so I gave it to them. Inside again, I ripped down the unstable beams blocking their way and cleared a hallway that had collapsed. It took a minute at most. By the time I came back out, the water streams were hitting clean. "All yours, gentlemen," I said. The chief gave me a firm nod. "We'll take it from here." I waved once to the crowd, then rose back into the air. Cheers followed me until I was blocks away. Not long after, another sound caught me. Brakes screeching, metal grinding. A bus on an overpass, front wheels hanging off. Cars jammed behind it, horns blaring. People inside the bus screamed for help. I angled down and landed right in front of the bumper. The asphalt crumbled slightly under my boots as I braced myself. "All right, folks," I called up, keeping my voice smooth. "Nobody panic. We've got this handled." The driver leaned out the window, sweat on his face. "The brakes, they're gone. We can't move." I gave him a calm nod. "Relax. You're safe." I pressed my hands under the front and lifted. Slowly, the bus came level again. Gasps rose from the passengers as I raised the entire vehicle above my shoulders. A few more steps forward and I set it down gently on the road, clear of the bridge's edge. The doors swung open and the passengers poured out, clapping, some crying. "Thank you," the driver said, still stunned. "Part of the job," I said with a grin. "Stay safe out there." Phones filmed from every angle. The cheers rolled again as I rose back into the sky. The next call wasn't so big. "A mugging in progress, alley just off 4th Street." I slowed my descent, cape brushing the brick as I touched down. 3 men had a teenager cornered, knives flashing in the dark. "All right, boys," I said, voice steady but firm. "Drop the knives. Show's over." They spun, startled, one of them cursing under his breath. "It's him," Another hissed. That's right, I said, hands on my hips. So here's the choice, walk away now, or wait here tied up for the cops. They lunged anyway. Poor choice. I blurred forward once. A moment later, the knives were snapped in half and the three of them were wrapped together with a bent fire escape ladder. The teenager stared, wide-eyed. You okay, champ? I asked him, crouching slightly. He nodded quickly. Why yet? Thanks. Good. Head home. Tell your folks Metro Man says hi. He smiled nervously before running off. I turned back to the muggers. Police'll be here in 2 minutes. Enjoy the wait. Then I took off again. That was the rhythm for the rest of the night. A building with a weak roof nearly collapsing during a party, I reinforced the beams and carried everyone out. A high-speed chase down Main, I picked the car up and left it neatly in front of a squad car. A runaway dog weaving through traffic, I lifted it safely into its owner's arms. None of it slowed me down. I stayed visible, stayed calm. Every stop ended the same way, cheers, applause, cameras, the city feeling safe again. By midnight, the calls eased. I drifted above downtown, cape catching the wind, eyes scanning the lights below. Billboards flashed, clubs thumped with bass, traffic never stopped. People pointed and waved from rooftops. Metro Man, they called. I gave them a nod, a wave, the same smooth smile. Always consistent. That's what they expected. Finally, I landed on the roof of City Hall. It was quiet up there. Only the wind and the faint hum of neon signs nearby. I stood at the edge, hands folded loosely behind my back, looking down at the streets. I'd done enough for tonight. The city was safe. But my thoughts went back to the Grayson house. To Mark lifting that first rock, wobbling in the air, crashing through the fence. To the look on his face when he realized he was flying for real. That kind of excitement was hard to miss. He was green, clumsy, but determined. The kid had it in him. I gave a short laugh under my breath. Not bad, champ. Not bad at all. The city noise carried up to me, sirens in the distance, horns blaring, music thumping, but I stayed still, cape tugged by the breeze. Another patrol finished. Another night handled. Tomorrow would bring more. It always did. And when it did, I'd be there. Invincible, reborn as Metro Man, brother of Omni-Man. Chapter 16, Training Day 2. The next morning, I didn't need to guess where I'd end up. After patrol last night, I'd gone home, caught some sleep, and woke with the same thought. Mark wasn't going to let a whole day pass before he was back at it. Nolan wouldn't either. By mid-morning, I was floating over the Grayson neighborhood. Same quiet streets, same trimmed lawns, same kids on bikes pedaling past. Nothing out of place. I touched down on the grass outside their home and gave the door a light knock. Debbie answered again, this time with less surprise. She even smiled a little. Metro Man. You're back. That's me, I said with the same smooth grin. Training round 2, right? Her smile softened. Mark's been waiting since he woke up. I chuckled. Figured as much. Behind her, Mark's voice carried down the stairs. Mom, is he here? He appeared a second later, bounding down 2 steps at a time, nearly tripping again. He had on a t-shirt and jeans, hair messy, but his grin stretched wide. Uncle Metro Man. Morning, champ, I said. Ready for another round? He nodded fast. More than ready. Nolan appeared in the hall behind him, expression flat but eyes sharp. We're using the open field today. Yard's not enough anymore. Lead the way, I said. The field stretched wide just beyond the houses, a patch of grass and dirt that had been clear for years. No fences to break, no trees close enough to hit. Good choice. Mark bounced on his feet, excitement practically leaking out of him. Nolan stood tall, arms behind his back, voice firm. I kept to the side, arms folded across my chest, cape dragging in the breeze. Yesterday you flew, Nolan said to Mark. Today you'll build control. Faster, higher, steadier. Mark nodded quickly. Got it. Up, Nolan ordered. Mark bent his knees, pushed, and launched upward. He rose higher than yesterday, wobbling less. He steadied himself after a moment, hovering at a decent height. Not bad, I called, voice smooth. Better posture today, champ. Mark grinned down at me before turning his focus back forward. Forward motion, Nolan instructed. Longer distance. Then circle back. Mark nodded and leaned forward. This time he didn't rocket off too wildly. He picked up speed, making a wide arc across the field, and returned. He landed on both feet, stumbled a little, but stayed upright. Better, Nolan said. Mark grinned. That felt awesome. Again, Nolan said. Faster. Mark launched again, this time pushing himself harder. His speed doubled, his flight path steadier. He made the arc, came back, and landed harder, knees bending to absorb it. Good, Nolan said. I clapped lightly, keeping the smile. That's what I'm talking about. Clean sweep. Mark's grin widened. Thanks. Higher, Nolan ordered next. Straight up. Mark looked up, swallowed once, then shot into the sky. His body wobbled at first, but then steadied as he climbed. He went higher than the clouds before slowing. How far? He called down, voice faint. That's enough, Nolan said firmly. Mark descended, slower this time, until he landed again on the grass. He panted lightly but grinned. That was incredible. Control, Nolan reminded. Don't lose it. Mark nodded quickly. Right. Control. The drills went on for another hour. Nolan had him flying forward at higher speeds, practicing turns, testing descents. Mark crashed twice, rolled across the dirt once, but always got up fast, brushing himself off with a grin. I called out steady comments each time. Keep your arms tucked, champ. Nice turn. Bit wide, but solid. Good landing, almost stylish. Mark laughed a few times, even through the sweat and dirt. Nolan stayed firm, always pressing him forward, always pushing. Finally, Nolan raised a hand. Strength. Over here. He walked to a line of heavy boulders at the edge of the field. Mark followed, breathing hard but still eager. Lift, Nolan ordered. Mark crouched and gripped one of the larger rocks. It came up like nothing. He raised it overhead and laughed. This feels insane. Throw it, Nolan said. Mark blinked. Throw it. Now. Mark turned and hurled the boulder across the field. It sailed far before crashing into the dirt. Dust rose in the distance. Mark stared, wide-eyed. Did you see that? Again, Nolan said. Mark grabbed another and threw. Then another. Each one went farther. I chuckled lightly. Looks like you've got an arm, champ. Baseball scouts would be jealous. Mark grinned, sweat dripping. This is crazy. Nolan crossed his arms. Strength is nothing without control. Precision next. He pointed at a smaller rock. Hit that tree trunk. Mark picked up a boulder, aimed, and threw. The rock smashed into the ground a few feet wide. Too far left, Nolan said. Mark grabbed another, adjusted, and threw again. This time he clipped the edge of the trunk. Closer, Nolan said. Mark kept going. Throw after throw. Some missed, some clipped, one finally struck dead center. Mark pumped his fist. Yes. Again, Nolan said immediately. Mark groaned but grabbed another rock. I smirked. No breaks with your dad around, champ. Mark laughed, shaking his head before throwing again. By the time 2 hours passed, Mark was covered in sweat and dirt, his shirt clinging to him. He panted heavily, hands on his knees, but his grin hadn't faded. That was awesome, he said between breaths. Nolan's voice stayed flat. You're sloppy. But you're improving. We'll go again tomorrow. Mark straightened, still breathing hard but nodding quickly. Yeah. Tomorrow. Got it. I stepped forward, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. Not bad, champ. Day 2 and you're already flying laps and tossing boulders. That's progress. Mark laughed breathlessly. Thanks, Uncle Metro Man. Anytime, I said with the grin. Debbie had been watching from the fence the whole time. She walked out now with a bottle of water and handed it to Mark. He drank half in seconds. You did well, she said softly. Mark smiled. Thanks, Mom. Nolan stayed firm, but his eyes lingered on his son. I gave them the easy smile, hands on my hips. Not a bad start to the week, folks. Kids shaping up fast. Mark's grin widened again, even through his exhaustion. Best day ever. Chapter 17, Another night on the clock. By the time the sun dipped past the horizon, I'd already left the Grayson place behind. Mark had dragged himself inside after training, exhausted but smiling through every word. Debbie had hovered over him, Nolan had stayed stone-faced, and I'd kept my same grin as I slipped away. The family part wasn't mine to handle. The city was. I lifted above the suburbs, cape catching the last traces of daylight, then angled toward downtown. Lights were already glowing, headlights jamming the streets, and voices carried loud over the hum of traffic. It looked the same as every night, busy, restless, never stopping. As soon as I came into view, people noticed. They always did. Fingers pointed, voices called out, phones flashed. Metro Man, someone shouted from below. I lowered just enough to wave. Evening, folks. Don't stay out too late. Cheers followed me down the block. The first trouble came quick. My ears caught it, sharp screech of tires, metal crunching, screams. Intersection on 8th and Mason. I pushed off, slowed as I arrived. 2 cars had collided, one flipped on its side, smoke pouring from the hood. People crowded the sidewalks, shouting. A woman pounded against the glass of the overturned car, trapped inside. I touched down calm and steady. All right, everyone back up. Give me some room. The crowd moved instantly. I crouched, pressed my hands against the crumpled frame, and pried the door free in one clean motion. The woman scrambled out, coughing, tears in her eyes. You're okay now, I said smoothly. Go with the paramedics. She nodded, barely able to get a thank you out as 2 EMTs rushed her away. The driver of the other car was still slumped behind the wheel. I pulled the door open gently, lifted him out, and carried him over to the ambulance. He was breathing, just unconscious. The medics took him quickly. Everyone else clear? I asked. One of the officers nodded. That's all of them. Thanks, Metro Man. Anytime, officer, I said, giving him the calm grin before lifting back into the air. The cheers picked up again behind me, cameras flashing until the lights became dots. Next call was just as fast. Alarm bells, sharp and high, coming from a jewelry store 6 blocks down. I touched down in front as 3 masked men tried to sprint out with bags clutched in their arms. They froze the moment they saw me. "Evening, fellas," I said smoothly. "That's quite a collection you've got there. How about you put it back?" They hesitated, glancing at each other. One tried to bolt. I blurred forward, grabbed the bag from his hands, and set it back inside before he even finished his first step. The other 2 raised their weapons, but I was already between them. I bent the barrels upward with 2 quick motions, dropped the weapons onto the sidewalk, and stacked the men neatly beside them. Police cars screeched up a second later. I gestured toward the pile. "All yours, gentlemen. Caught red-handed." The officers rushed to cuff the men. The crowd that had gathered clapped and cheered. Phones everywhere. "Metro Man, can we get a smile?" someone called. I gave them the easy grin. "Always." They cheered louder as I lifted back off. The night rolled on in that rhythm. A fire alarm at a hotel false start, but I still checked every floor. A runaway car rolling down a hill, I stopped it with one hand, returned it to the stunned owner with a nod. A group of kids stuck on a rooftop after a stairwell door jammed, I carried them down one by one, their parents crying with relief. Every stop, every smile, every calm reassurance. That was the work. Around 9, I stopped mid-air over the river. My ears caught a new sound, panicked shouts, wood splintering. A ferryboat had taken on water, leaning hard to one side. Dozens of passengers crowded the deck, some trying to climb railings, others clutching each other. I dropped down onto the tilting deck. "Stay calm, folks," I called, voice carrying across the boat. "Nobody's going under tonight." The passengers froze, then the cries turned to shouts of relief. I pressed one hand to the deck and lifted. The entire boat steadied, water dripping from its sides as I carried it slowly back toward the dock. People gasped and pointed, phones flashing non-stop. "Keep holding on," I told them smoothly. "You'll be on solid ground in a minute." "Less than that, really." I set the ferry down gently against the dock, making sure it held before letting go. The passengers spilled out, hugging, crying, clapping. "Thank you," someone yelled from the crowd. "Anytime," I said with a grin. The cheer that followed was deafening. By midnight, I'd stopped more small incidents than I could count. Purse snatcher. Kitchen fire. A scaffolding collapse that I caught before it hit the ground. The pattern never changed. Applause, relief, and my same smooth reassurances. Finally, I rose above downtown and slowed. The city stretched beneath me, glowing and restless. Clubs blared music, taxis honked, neon signs flashed. People on rooftops pointed, waved, shouted my name. "Metro Man." I waved back, steady as always. "Get home safe, folks." I drifted down onto the roof of City Hall, standing at the edge, cape brushing against the ledge in the breeze. Another patrol done. No disasters left unhandled. No one hurt on my watch tonight. And in the back of my head, I could still see Mark's grin from earlier, dirt smeared across his face as he lifted another rock overhead. He was green, sloppy, but improving fast. "Not bad, champ," I said quietly to myself. The city noise rolled on beneath me. The job wasn't finished, never would be, but for tonight it was steady. That was enough. Chapter 18, pushed to the limit. The morning after patrol, I already knew where I was headed. The city was quiet enough, no alarms in my ears, no crashes in the distance. That gave me the space to check in on Mark again. By the time I touched down on the Grayson lawn, the front door was already opening. Debbie stood there, a little more relaxed than before, though her eyes still carried that same hint of worry. "Metro Man," she said. "That's me," I answered with the grin. "Guessing today's another lesson." She sighed lightly but nodded. "They're out back." "Appreciate it, ma'am." I stepped past her and into the yard. Nolan was already standing in the open space, arms crossed, posture tight. Mark bounced on his feet nearby, already breathing a little heavier than usual. Looked like they'd started without me. "Morning, gentlemen," I said, hands on my hips. "Hope I'm not late." Nolan gave me a brief glance. "We've only just begun." Mark grinned, waving. "Uncle Metro Man. You made it again." "Wouldn't miss it, champ," I said, easy tone never slipping. "Yesterday was control," Nolan began, voice flat but commanding. "Today is endurance. You won't just move, you'll keep moving. Longer. Harder." Mark nodded quickly. "Okay. Take to the sky," Nolan ordered. Mark crouched, then launched upward. His lift was smoother than before, steadier. He hovered a few seconds, then looked down, waiting. "Forward," Nolan called. "Do not stop until I say." Mark angled forward and shot across the field. His path was still shaky, but not nearly as rough as the first day. He circled wide, looped back, and flew again. "Faster," Nolan commanded. Mark leaned in harder, speed doubling. His breathing quickened even from where I stood, chest heaving with effort. "Keep going," Nolan said. Mark made another loop. Then another. By the fifth, sweat was already dripping from his forehead. His movements grew choppier. "Don't slow down," Nolan barked. Mark gritted his teeth, forcing his pace. He wobbled once, dipped low, then corrected himself. "Good save," I called up, smooth and even. "Keep that line steady, champ." Mark glanced down briefly, managing a grin even as he strained. After nearly 10 minutes of flight, Nolan raised a hand. "Down." Mark descended too fast, stumbled as his feet hit, and dropped onto his knees. He panted heavily, wiping sweat off his face. "That was intense," he breathed. "Not enough," Nolan said firmly. "Endurance will decide if you survive, not comfort." Mark nodded quickly, still gasping for air. "Right. Got it." "On your feet," Nolan ordered. Mark pushed himself up, still panting. "Strength," Nolan said next, turning toward a line of large concrete blocks stacked at the edge of the yard. "Move them. One at a time. No breaks." Mark stared at the blocks, then nodded. "Okay." He walked over, gripped the first, and lifted it overhead. His arms trembled slightly, but he carried it a few yards before dropping it down. "Next," Nolan ordered. Mark grabbed another. And another. Each one heavier, each one testing him more. His face flushed, sweat soaking his shirt. He grunted with each lift but never quit. "Breathe steady, champ," I called. "Don't lock up your shoulders." Mark adjusted, nodding, still hauling the blocks. By the time he reached the last, his legs shook, his grip almost slipping. He staggered but made it to the line and set it down with a final gasp. He bent over, hands on his knees, panting hard. "Better," Nolan said, his tone never softening. "But not good enough." Mark managed a weak laugh. "That was brutal." "Again tomorrow," Nolan said flatly. Mark groaned but straightened. "Right." Nolan wasn't finished. He pointed toward the sky. "Altitude next. As high as you can go. Then back down fast." Repeat until I stop you. Mark groaned softly but bent his knees again and launched upward. He climbed fast, disappearing into the clouds. A few seconds later, he streaked back down, landing rough but upright. Again, Nolan said immediately. Mark launched again. And again. Each time slower, each time rougher on the landing. His legs buckled once, but he stayed upright. His breaths grew ragged, sweat dripping into his eyes. Don't stop, Nolan said. Mark grit his teeth, forcing another launch. He shot up, slower this time, then back down, stumbling hard as he hit the ground. Keep your knees bent, champ, I called, smooth as ever. You'll soften the landings. Mark adjusted slightly, his next landing less harsh. He still panted hard, though, chest heaving. Finally, Nolan raised a hand. That's enough. Mark collapsed onto the grass, lying flat, arms spread. I can't move. You will, Nolan said firmly. You'll get stronger. Mark laughed breathlessly. Feels like I just got hit by a train. I crouched beside him, still smiling. That's the Viltrumite workout for you, kid. Builds character. Mark laughed again, even while gasping. Yeah, no kidding. Debbie came out then, holding a bottle of water and a towel. She knelt beside Mark, dabbing his forehead. You've done enough for today, she said softly. Mark gulped water between breaths, still smiling. That was awesome. You'll need more discipline, Nolan said, eyes narrowing. But this is progress. Mark nodded quickly. I'll do better tomorrow. I patted his shoulder lightly. You're already doing better, champ. First day, you couldn't even stay in the air. Now look at you. 2 hours of flight, lifting concrete like it's nothing. Mark grinned weakly. Thanks, Uncle Metro Man. Anytime, I said, standing tall again. Debbie gave me a grateful glance before helping Mark to his feet. His legs wobbled, but he stood. Nolan's eyes stayed fixed on him, sharp and unreadable. I kept my easy smile, hands on my hips. Not a bad day's work, folks. Kids shaping up faster than I expected. Mark's grin returned despite his exhaustion. Best day ever, again. Chapter 19, Night Watch Again. After leaving the Grayson backyard, I didn't stick around. Mark could barely stay standing, but the grin on his face hadn't budged an inch. Debbie got him inside, Nolan stayed sharp-eyed but silent, and that was all I needed to see. The family part wasn't mine to touch. My job came after. I rose above the neighborhood, cape pulling behind me in the breeze, and leveled out over the city. Downtown glowed already, traffic building heavy at every intersection, neon signs flashing, people crowding sidewalks. Same routine, same restlessness. And, as always, the moment I came into view, the calls started. Metro Man. Phones went up, people waved, voices carried through the blocks. I raised a hand, gave the calm grin. Evening, folks. Keep it safe tonight. Cheers rippled behind me as I angled further into the city. The first problem came minutes later. My hearing caught it, brakes screeching, voices screaming, a sharp crash. A delivery truck had jackknifed at a busy intersection, cars piling around it, smoke rolling out from under the hood. I dropped down fast, boots hitting the pavement hard enough to shake the asphalt. Drivers climbed out, panicked, pointing toward the cab. The driver's stuck, someone shouted. I stepped up to the door, pressed one hand against the warped metal, and pulled. The door screeched as it came off clean. The driver slumped inside, dazed but breathing. You're all right, I said, steady tone. Let's get you clear. I lifted him free, carried him a few steps, and set him into the arms of 2 paramedics rushing forward. They checked him over fast. "Anyone else?" I asked, scanning. "No, just him," one officer answered, relief in his voice. "Good. Then I'll handle the rest." I turned, gripped the front of the smoking truck, and dragged it clear of the intersection in seconds. The crushed cars behind it had doors bent, but nothing too bad. I ripped one open for a young couple still trapped, pulled another roof up enough for a man to crawl out. By the time the road was clear, the crowd was already clapping and cheering. Phones were out everywhere. "Thank you, Metro Man," the couple shouted as they hugged each other. "Anytime, folks," I said with a grin. "Glad you're all right." I left as the officers took over, the cheers rolling louder behind me. The next stop came even faster. Gunfire in an alley 4 blocks away. I followed the sound, slowed as I landed at the mouth of the alley. 2 men had a shop owner pressed against a wall, weapons raised. "Evening, gentlemen," I called, voice steady and calm. "This is where you stop." They spun, startled, fear flashing across their faces. One fired, but the bullet flattened against my chest, falling harmlessly to the pavement. I raised an eyebrow, still smiling. "Not gonna work." Before they could react again, I blurred forward. Their weapons vanished from their hands, bent into useless shapes, clattering to the ground. A second later, both men were stacked neatly against the wall, wrists tied together with their own belts. The shop owner gaped, trembling. "You all right, sir?" I asked him. He nodded quickly. "Why yet? Thank you. Head home. Police'll handle these 2. He scrambled away as sirens grew closer. I gave the officers a wave as I lifted back off. 2 gift wrapped. "Alley's clear." They shouted thanks as I vanished into the sky. By 9, the pattern kept up. A fire alarm at a small diner reel this time. Flames licked the kitchen, smoke choking the air. I pulled 3 workers out before carrying buckets of water from the fire truck in quick bursts, dousing the worst of the flames in less than a minute. A collapsing scaffolding on a construction site. I grabbed the entire platform mid-fall, lowered it safely to the ground, and set it aside. The workers gave me a round of applause before rushing to check each other. A runaway taxi weaving through traffic. After the driver blacked out, I caught the car by the bumper, lifted it onto the curb, and carried the man to paramedics. The passengers climbed out, wide-eyed, muttering thanks through their shock. Every stop ended the same way, calm reassurances, the same easy grin, and cheers rising as I left. Around 10, I caught something bigger. A bank alarm, shrill and high, echoing across several blocks. I angled down, touching the pavement right outside as 3 masked men ran out with duffel bags. "Evening, fellas," I said smoothly, folding my arms. "Don't suppose that's yours?" They froze. One bolted. I blurred ahead, standing in his path before he got 3 steps. "Wrong way," I said. He skidded to a stop, eyes wide. The second man raised his weapon. I plucked it from his grip before he could fire and snapped it in half with one hand. The third man dropped his bag immediately, hands shaking. "Good choice," I said with a grin. Police cars screeched up seconds later. I nudged the 3 toward the officers. "Caught red-handed. Bags are full." The crowd across the street cheered, phones filming from every angle. I gave the wave. "Stay safe, folks." Then I lifted back off. The night stretched on. By midnight, I'd answered more calls than I could count. A building fire under control. A car accident cleared. A lost child reunited with his mother. A dozen small rescues that didn't make the news but mattered to the people involved. Every stop ended with the same rhythm. Calm voice. Steady hands. A smile. Cheers following me into the air. Finally, I rose above downtown and slowed. The city below buzzed with its usual noise. Clubs thumped with bass, taxis honked, people filled sidewalks. And scattered across rooftops, fingers pointed upward as voices shouted. Metro Man! I waved once, smiling. Evening, folks. Get home safe. Their cheers carried even as I floated further away. I landed on the roof of City Hall, the same spot I always took at the end. The wind tugged at my cape, the city lights stretching in every direction. I stayed there for a while, scanning, listening. No alarms. No crashes. Just the steady noise of a city that could sleep easier. Another patrol done. And in the back of my head, I still saw Mark gasping for breath in the grass earlier, laughing anyway, grinning through exhaustion. Kid had heart. He'd get stronger. Keep it up, champ, I said quietly to myself. Then I pushed off the roof, heading home at last. Chapter 20, A Secret Shared. School started the same as always. The bell rang sharp at 8, lockers slammed up and down the halls, and kids crowded through doorways with half-eaten breakfasts in their hands. Mark Grayson moved with them, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair still a little messy from rushing out the door. But inside, nothing about today felt normal. For 2 days straight, his dad and uncle had pushed him through training sessions that left him sore in muscles he didn't even know existed. He'd flown until his arms shook, thrown rocks until his hands blistered, and come home each night barely able to climb the stairs. And he loved it. Every bit of it. Now, walking through the halls like everything was the same, he felt like he was holding in an explosion. William clocked it immediately. His best friend leaned against Mark's locker when he arrived, grinning like usual. "Dude, what's up with you? You're glowing." Mark blinked. "Glowing? Yeah, like, not literally, but you're walking around like something huge happened." "Spill." Mark hesitated, glancing at the crowd of kids squeezing past. "Too many ears." He lowered his voice. "Not here." William's grin widened. "Not here? Oh man, this is big." "You finally asked out Amber." "No," Mark muttered, stuffing books into his locker. "It's different. Trust me. Meet me after school, behind Burger Martinique." William raised his eyebrows. "Burger Mart? What, is this a drug deal?" Mark shut his locker with a sharp click. "Just meet me." William laughed, throwing up his hands. "Fine, fine. Behind Burger Mart. After school. Whatever this is, it better be worth skipping the bus." Mark slung his backpack over his shoulder, fighting to hide his grin. "It will be." Classes dragged. Mark barely heard the teachers, his notebook filling with doodles instead of notes. Every time he tried to focus, his mind drifted back to the training field, the rush of wind in his ears, the ground shrinking below, the weight of the rocks in his hands. He still couldn't believe it. It felt impossible to sit still knowing he could launch into the air at any second. When the final bell rang, he was out of his seat before the teacher finished dismissing them. William jogged to catch up, still grinning. "All right, man. What's the big secret? You're killing me here." "You'll see," Mark said quickly. "Just, come on." The walk to Burger Mart took 10 minutes. William kept throwing guesses the entire way. "You got a car, didn't you?" "No, your mom bought you something." Wait, did you win the lottery?" "You're acting like you won the lottery." Mark kept shaking his head, biting back a smile. "Nope. None of that." Finally, they reached the back lot. Empty dumpsters lined the wall, the asphalt cracked in spots. It was quiet. William crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow. All right. Big reveal. Don't tell me you dragged me out here to show me some new shoes. Mark took a deep breath. Okay. Don't freak out. William frowned. Freak out? Dude, what? Mark bent his knees and shot upward. In less than a second, he was 10 feet in the air, hovering awkwardly but steady. William's jaw dropped. What the Mark? Mark grinned down at him, floating in place. Pretty cool, hey. You're flying. William shouted, voice cracking. You're actually flying. What the hell? Mark landed with a small stumble, laughing nervously. Yeah. I got my powers. Couple days ago. William gawked, pointing. You're serious? This isn't a prank? You're not hanging from wires or... Mark cut him off by lifting back up, this time higher, circling once before dropping back down. He landed smoother. William staggered back, eyes wide. Holy crap! Holy crap! You're invincible! Mark blinked. What? That's your name now? William declared, throwing his arms out. Invincible. Dude, you're like this is insane. How long have you been keeping this from me? Mark rubbed the back of his neck. Since 2 days ago. I didn't want to tell anyone. But you're my best friend. I had to tell someone. William shook his head, still in shock. This is nuts. Your dad's Omni-Man and now you wait, does your mom know? Does Amber know? Mom knows, Mark said quickly. Amber doesn't. And don't tell her. Please. William zipped his lips with his fingers. Not a word. But man, I can't believe this. Omni-Man's your dad, Metro Man's your uncle, and now you're part of this too. Mark smiled nervously. Yeah. Training's been intense. William laughed, still buzzing. Intense? Dude, you're flying. That's more than intense. Can you do anything else? Like, super strength. Mark walked over to one of the dumpsters, braced his hands against the side, and lifted it overhead. The metal groaned, garbage bags shifting, but he held it steady. William clapped his hands to his head. Oh my god! Oh my god! Mark, this is insane! Mark set the dumpster back down carefully, brushing off his hands. I told you it'd be worth it. Worth it? This is the biggest thing ever. You're literally a superhero now. Mark hesitated, smile fading slightly. Not yet. I'm still figuring it out. Dad and Uncle Metro Man are training me. It's a lot. William's grin softened just a little. Yeah, I bet. But dude, this is huge. You're gonna be amazing. I mean invincible. Seriously, it's the perfect name. Mark laughed despite himself. Invincible, hey. Trust me, William said, grinning again. It fits. They spent the next half hour in the lot, Mark showing small bursts of what he could do. Lifting a car a few inches off the ground. Jumping clear over the dumpsters. Floating awkwardly before landing again. Each time, William reacted with the same mix of awe and disbelief, clapping, laughing, and shouting. You're really doing it, William kept repeating. You're really one of them now. Mark finally dropped back onto the cracked asphalt, panting a little. Okay, that's enough for today. I'm wiped. William shook his head, still smiling. Man, I'm never gonna look at you the same way again. Please do, Mark said quickly. I don't want things to get weird. William raised his hands. Fine, fine. Same old Mark. Just, same old Mark who can fly and lift cars. Mark laughed, shaking his head. Yet. That. The sun was dipping by the time they left the lot. William kept glancing at Mark like he was still trying to convince himself it was real. Invincible, he muttered under his breath, grinning. It's perfect. Mark rolled his eyes but couldn't stop smiling. Chapter 21, Fourth Day in the Field. Morning came around the same as before. Patrol had ended late for me, but by sunrise I was already up and moving again. My job didn't stop, but Mark's progress wasn't something I was going to ignore. By the time I reached the Grayson house, I could already tell Nolan had plans for the day. Debbie answered the door. She gave a tired smile, already used to seeing me there. He's waiting in the back again. I gave her the same easy grin. Appreciate it, ma'am. Guessing today's another step up. Her expression tightened briefly before she nodded. Looks that way. I stepped past her, out into the yard. Nolan stood in the field behind the house, arms folded, jaw set. Mark was there too, shifting on his feet, stretching his arms out, looking both nervous and excited. The dirt under his shoes still carried the scuffs from yesterday's landings. Morning, gentlemen, I said, walking up with my usual steady tone. Looks like we're back at it again. Mark grinned. Hey, Uncle Metro Man. Morning, Nolan said flatly, eyes never leaving his son. You ready for this, champ? I asked, folding my arms. Mark nodded quickly. Yet. I've been waiting since last night. Good. Let's see what you've got. Nolan stepped forward. His voice was even, sharp. We're moving past basics. You can fly, you can lift, you can throw. Today, it's about precision and speed combined. If you can't control yourself at high speed, you'll never keep up in a fight. Mark's grin faltered slightly, but he nodded. Got it. Up, Nolan ordered. Mark bent his knees and launched. His lift was smoother than ever, rising cleanly into the air. He steadied after a short wobble, then hovered above them. Full sprint, Nolan commanded. Across the field. Stop on my mark. Mark shot forward, dirt kicking up beneath him as he streaked across the yard. His speed doubled from yesterday. Stop! Nolan barked. Mark skidded in midair, overshooting the line by a dozen feet. He staggered, wingspan flailing before he corrected. He landed rough, boots scraping the dirt. Too far, Nolan said coldly. Mark winced. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Again, Nolan said. Mark launched forward again. This time he braked sooner, but his landing was clumsy, knees hitting the ground. Closer, Nolan said. Again. Mark stood, wiping dirt off his jeans, and took off again. Better posture that time, champ, I called, keeping my grin. You're pulling up cleaner. Mark gave a small grin midair before focusing back down. For the next 20 minutes, Nolan had him sprinting back and forth across the field, stopping on command. Each time, Nolan called out the flaws. Each time, Mark tried harder. By the 10th run, sweat was dripping down his face, his shirt sticking to his back. Keep your momentum under control, Nolan ordered. Every extra inch is wasted energy. Mark panted heavily, nodding. Got it. You're still sloppy, Nolan pressed. Mark gritted his teeth, forced another launch, and stopped shorter this time, landing upright. His chest heaved, but his grin returned. That was clean, I said smoothly. Keep that up. Mark gave me a thumbs up, still breathing hard. Nolan didn't pause. Strength drills next. Endurance with control. He pointed toward another line of heavy boulders stacked at the far side of the field. Bigger than last time. Lift. Carry. Place them in a straight line. No dropping. Mark walked over, bracing himself. He wrapped his arms around the first boulder, grunted, and lifted it overhead. His legs shook, but he held it. Walk, Nolan ordered. Mark staggered forward, every step heavy, before setting it down in line. Next. Mark grabbed another, groaning with effort. He carried it, slower this time, but still set it down clean. Good grip, champ, I called. Keep your back straight. Mark adjusted, nodding quickly. Thanks. He kept going. By the fourth boulder, sweat ran down his temples, dripping into his eyes. His arms trembled. He nearly dropped it once, but corrected, teeth clenched. He set it down with a gasp, dropping to his knees. Again, Nolan ordered, pointing at the next. Mark looked up, chest heaving. Yet. I can do it. He pushed himself up, grabbed the next boulder, and lifted again. The exercise dragged on nearly 40 minutes. By the end, all the boulders were lined neatly across the field. Mark collapsed onto the grass, arms limp, face flushed. That was insane, he panted. You need endurance, Nolan said firmly. That was only a fraction of what you'll face. Mark laughed weakly. Yet. I figured. I crouched beside him, smiling. Not bad, champ. Yesterday you could barely finish half of that. Today you lined the whole row. Mark grinned through the exhaustion. Thanks. Nolan wasn't finished. Altitude sprints. Straight up. Full speed. Back down. Mark groaned but nodded. Okay. He forced himself up, legs wobbling. He bent his knees and launched skyward, blasting into the clouds. Seconds later, he plummeted back down, landing hard enough to send dirt flying. Again, Nolan ordered. Mark launched again. And again. Each time slower, each time rougher. His breathing grew ragged, his landings harsher. Don't lose your posture, Nolan snapped. Mark corrected slightly on the next run, his descent steadier. His knees bent on landing, softening the impact. Better, Nolan admitted. Not bad at